Panorama folklore, but in recent times it's been Audi versus Mercedes AMG in GT racing, and once again they will go from the front row of the grid. Delighted to say I'm joined by not only Greg Russ but Andrew Jones in the commentary box. Gentlemen, welcome back. Nice to see cars on the racetrack.
Proudly introduced by the Minister for the 12-hour who loves this sort of racing. He gets ultra passionate about it, and we have seen in GT competition, I know this is not the 12-hour, but we've seen some great races here over the years, and they played a very important part of the overall Bathurst history, haven't they?
And some really iconic cars in here too. Aspirational gets thrown around a lot. You know, these are cars that most of us see out on the road and think, man, how cool would it be to own one? How are these guys all out there racing them? Even better.
And Brad Schumacher going off the front. At that point, as he turned into turn one, he could look to his right and see his house. This is as home ground as it gets. This is how it works out in GT World Challenge. The class within a class racing, so we'll follow those stories. The indicator on the left-hand side of that graphic for colour indicates the class, so you can refer to that in the timing screen across the course of the weekend. The grid was set based on the lap time of both the amateur driver and the pro, so it brings the part-timers into the game alongside the super fast pros. The rules, while they're complicated, we'll work through them with you over the course of the race, but there has to be 3 mandatory pit stops throughout the course of the race. There has to be a driver change in every pit stop, and we'll talk about some magic numbers for you when we get to it. Andy Jones, let's talk about the place that we're racing, Mount Panorama Bathurst.
It really doesn't need an introduction, does it? On the global scale, this place is so well revered, and particularly as we follow the little track map here up over the top of the hill, some of the braver stuff, particularly in these cars, you know, the Audi I know from the cutting all the way up to going over Skyline down through the S's is flat in the dry conditions. Just get your head around that, guys. And then we come down this iconic Conrod straight, huge break at the end around Murray's Corner for the final time. And this place, I just got some little chills going on, you know, just describing that.
Back to live pictures. Andy Jones has had a coffee, so he's all psyched and ready in the commentary box. Doesn't get adamant. The reason you're probably psyched is when we have conditions like this and you've got our AM drivers who are starting this race. Big mission for the likes of Brad Schumacher, isn't it? Yeah,
no doubt. But, you know, in the likes of Brad Schumacher, he did a 2:05.3 for an AM. I'm not necessarily sure he should be called an AM at that speed. That is super, super impressive. So, you know, you can see here as we ride on board and we look over Brad's right-hand shoulder, a lot of weaving going on. The Pirelli wet weather tyre is really, really good in these conditions, but as a driver, you're still trying to generate as much tyre temp as you probably can, even behind the safety car.
So it's lifting, but that onboard picture was actually quite telling, wasn't it, at the top of the mountain?
It looked quite promising, actually, from a racing point of view. I like it. So Brad Schumacher and Tim Slade start from the front row. Now, the AM drivers start this race. So Jeffrey Ibrahim behind the wheel of car 888. Ross Polakis behind the wheel of the Harold's Racing AMG. He'll share with Jordan Love. Adrian Dietz driving the Lamborghini Gallardo. He'll share with David Wall. Mark Seeney's driving his Audi. Tim Miles in his off the third row of the grid. And then there's the race within a race in GT4. There's 2 Mercedes AMG GT4 cars, with Mark Griffith driving one and Chris Batsios the other for Harold's Racing. So they're going to have a really good little fight later on. We'll see Sam Brabham get his first racing laps of Mount Panorama. Remarkable to think that a driver with the surname Brabham has never done a racing lap at Mount Panorama, but Sam is yet to compete here in anything. This will be his first experience, and he is peaking about it. He cannot wait.
I saw him in town on Friday. And he said, I actually don't mind this weather. It's kind of like back home in England, but I'm getting to sample Bathurst. How good. So, yeah, fantastic to have him here. And I think you alluded to a little suggestion, maybe a story earlier in the weekend. Richard, we'd love to see him partner up with his dad here in one of these cars in the mountain. That'd be awesome.
I spoke to him earlier in the weekend and said, are you looking forward to it? He said, yeah, and the old man's watching from back home in the UK, and I'm giving him a nudge. So come on, come back time.
And for anybody playing at home that likes to track the weather like I do, I'm going to go and put a little forecast out there, guys. I think we won't see any more rain now till about 3 p.m. this afternoon. So this interesting scenario where we could start wet, it'll go dry towards the end of this race. It's a pretty brave call, I think, on my behalf this early on.
Extremely brave call, but I like it.
I'm going to go with it.
I am all for optimism at this point of the year in motorsport. So the field goes 2 by 2, rolling start in GT racing, and these opening laps will be very, very hairy. A lot of these drivers have got experience in these conditions, though, because it's very similar to the Bathurst 12-hour back in May. It's about 15 degrees warmer and a lot more humid, but the track conditions themselves aren't dissimilar, so there's some relevant knowledge.
And even Friday, we go back to Friday, all the AMs ran in very similar conditions.
Let's see how they put that experience to use. Audi versus Mercedes on the front row. Watch for the Lamborghini as well. It's been quick this weekend in the hands of David Wall and Adrian Dietz. GT World Challenge at Mount Panorama. Let's go racing. The clock starts and the field is away in really difficult conditions. Schumacher into turn 1. Clears Jeffrey Ibrahim in the 888 car. Palakis in third for Harold's Racing. He's got Jordan Love to look forward to in that car a little bit later on. He is going to be very quick. There's Tim Miles. Behind him, Mark Sini, their rivals in Porsche Carrera Cup regularly. They've traded the Cup cars for some Audis in this race. Everyone through turn 1. Nice start. They run up to 2.
And we really should too, Kralsey. You know, the brief for all the AM guys here, 3-hour race is very, very different to, say, a 20-lap sprint race where it's an all-out duke every single lap that you compete around here. This really should be a little bit of a phase, ease into it for these guys. They're trying to work out, okay, we spoke about them running in these conditions Friday, but are they the same? How much the same are they? How much tyre temp have I got up? Because there's no point in making a mistake this early on in a long race like this.
Running in 4th place at the moment, Adrian Dietz, and he is kind of the common feature of that Wall Racing Lamborghini Gallardo, because over time he's had some great co-drivers with him. Cameron McConville, Tony D'Alberto, this weekend, David Wall.
And I've had the pleasure of sharing a Maranello run Ferrari with Adrian Dietz a couple of times as well. He's a real student of the sport. He loves all the background to it. They've got they brought a guy along this weekend that runs in British GT and does strategy, so they brought him out to just complement that team a little bit. But he's a really good guy, loves his car racing and could talk about it all day long.
He does, and often, I mean, things like, hey, listen to a couple of podcasts on the way to Bathurst. Have you thought about interviewing so-and-so? Like, he's right into it, isn't he? It's great.
So, very gentle across the top. Everyone just easing into it. Smart from everyone involved. Schumacher with so much local knowledge, but he's got clear racetrack, no spray, and a huge amount of confidence. Brad was outstanding here at the Bathurst 12-hour. He did a very, very good job, and I joke with him when we see him. He's a factory Audi driver because he was in the Works-backed Audi with a couple of Works drivers, including the spectacular Kelvin van der Linde. They had a strategy miscue in that race, and it probably cost them at very least a podium, possibly a shot at the race win, because they were the quickest car. So he's got a bit to atone for this weekend, Brad Schumacher. But my point is, he did an outstanding job as the AM driver in a pro combination at the 12-hour earlier this year.
There has been a few discussions up and down the pit lane as to where there was more disappointment. Was it from the factory Audi group or yourself, Kralsey, with that misstep in their strategy for that day, because you really wore your heart on your sleeve? And you were looking for a grandstand finish, really, and we've spoken about it, haven't we?
Yeah, we'll never do that in television, Andrew.
It took away what was looking like a really thrilling battle between Gounon at the end there and Kelvin van der Linde, wasn't it? And really, they were the two guys that could have gone toe for toe.
Audi had the fastest car in that race, and they didn't get one of them on the podium. So, not a great result, was it? But they'll live and learn, and they'll come back again, I'm sure, and try to win Australia's International Enduro. And right now, a handy 6.5 second margin at the end of the opening lap. So let's crunch the numbers for you in this. There's 2 hours and 48 minutes on the clock, but forget that. Don't worry about it. The key numbers you need to worry about. Number one, 100 minutes. That's the maximum amount of time any one driver can spend in the car over the distance of the race. Now, for most combinations, you probably want that to be your pro. So in the case of the 888 Johor Motor Racing Mercedes AMG, that's Brock Feeney. Maximise the time your pro is in the car. That gives you the best shot at victory. Through that, you need to do 3 compulsory pit stops, a minimum time of 120 seconds each. You have to change the drivers every time. So there's going to be strategy here where you need to play a balance between driver time, between fuel, and when you want to get your car into pit lane. A lot of people, AJ, I've talked to in pit lane, are suggesting that this opening stint could be relatively short. Get the AM driver in the car, get into the race, pull them in, put your pro driver in for a short stint, and then work towards the end of the race so that your pro is in the car for the last 60 or 70 minutes for the run home.
Now, I know you've posed a question to AJ there, which we'll get an answer on in a second, but you know what I like about the overview that you've just given there? It means that what we've seen sometimes in the past of just get rid of the AM driver, get that component done. You actually can't do that. It's a bit trickier than that. So,
absolutely, and Krause alluded to it at the start there. You know, the category is now really taking ownership of the fact that it is a Pro-Am category, and you've got to combine the job that the two do together to get the best result, whether it's in qualifying or in the race here, Rusty. And you know, for me, I've been involved in a couple of these conversations earlier in the week about what strategy is the best one to run for this 3 hours. And I won't go into too much detail on it, but engineers love to start at the end of the race and then engineer their strategy backwards from there. What I love about being in those conversations is, and I love engineering people, don't smash me for this, but you know, they work on everything being perfect in a given scenario. And the wild card that, you know, I always bring up when I'm in those conversations is safety cars, safety cars. Where they fall, nobody can predict. And that's the wild card in all this for me. If we get a safety car at the wrong time, relative to those, you know, numbers that you rolled out for how long people can drive cars, then it does, you know, mean that people have to play on their feet, call strategies on the go, and it gets us up out of the seat.
100%. The other wild card, and I'm going to take your optimistic approach to the weather. What if at a point you have to put slicks on? That may dictate when you peel into pit lane. There may be a point where you need to get the car into the lane to put dry tyres on and get rid of the wets before you cook them. So that could be another factor that plays into this race when we get to the 60, 70, 80-minute mark.
I absolutely think it will, Krause, and I know you're saying I'm on the optimistic train, but I had my weather rock out there before and I didn't show you, but I put a cup out there as well, and there was a fair bit of water went in that cup, got about halfway full. Now, some people might say it was half empty, some might say it was half full. I'm going to say half full. We are definitely going to go to slicks at some point here over these 3 hours, and that will play into us here.
Our colleague Brian Ingus has just turned up with coffees. I'm a little concerned that there are 5 of them and there are 3 of us here.
And I've already got one.
Very good.
Sorry, Rusty, the other thing to look at, and fuel economy is not necessarily a massive role to play in this race because they have to make more pit stops than they need to for fuel. So these cars will go. The Audis generally in the past have been anywhere between 70 to 80 minutes. Schumacher runs it very wide at the braking zone, up the hill into the chase. The Audis can go 75 to 80 minutes. That will extend a little bit in the wet conditions because you're going slower, you're burning a little bit less fuel. Some of the Mercedes teams can go even further than that. I spoke to Garth Walden early on, and he was saying that they reckon they're going 80 minutes minimum on a tank of fuel, especially in the wet conditions. So that's the number we need to look at the end of the race for when you put your pro driver in at that final pit stop and get it ready to go to the finish.
See who's looking pretty handy in 5th place at the moment is Tim Miles in that battle with Adrian Dietz. Adrian seems from about turn 2 and on the climb up the mountain a little bit, as we see. Maybe proof of what Richard was talking about before with, I think that's Timmy Slade there on standby, isn't it? So, and waiting to potentially take over that car at some point from Brad Schumacher, and maybe sooner than what we ordinarily might have seen in the past. But Tim's doing a nice job at the moment, just 0.5 of Adrian in that fight for 4th place. And I know you spent a bit of time in that pit during the weekend because your mate Jack Smith's in there.
Yeah, he is, and it's a really good point you make, Rusty, because when the AMs were all out on track in these similar conditions on Friday, Timmy Miles was 2nd quickest AM driver over the short run that they had. So he does feel comfortable in these conditions. Look, let's not understate it. These cars are super fast, particularly across the top of the hill, and dry conditions, you've got to be committed. You don't do 203s and 204s around this circuit without huge amounts of commitment. And the skill level that these guys bring to the table to be able to do that is massive. So, you know, for guys like Tim Miles and Jack Smith and some of the guys that are not in them all the time or don't have a huge amount of knowledge with these cars, these conditions certainly help them. And Tim's doing a great job at the moment. He's moved forward a couple of spots. He's dispersed past Dietzy and got in front of Timmy Miles. And he's in front of Dietzy, sorry. Krause, we saw that shot while you were talking before of Schumacher just locking the rear brakes in the braking zone down at the chase there. To me, my read on it is it's suggesting that the circuit is drying out. He's willing to push the car under brakes. I could hear a little bit of audio. There is Jack Smith on the right-hand side and Michael Caruso on the left-hand side. So this will be a replay. Adrian Dietz in the Lamborghini. So it was a mistake from Dietzy, but thankfully he didn't make it into the fence. And that was a wave by for Tim Miles. You take them every day.
And then Milesy here at the top.
Just afterwards, so takes that shortcut, which is the best bit of paving that's ever happened at Mount Panorama at Brock Skyline. So he got away with that one. Backing up your comment about the track improving is the timing monitor, and there's a lot of colour on it at the moment with personal best lap time. So 2:28.6 for the leader. Jeffrey Ibrahim's taken a couple of seconds out of Brad Schumacher, and a 2:27.1 for the Triple Eight car, bested by Ross Polakis, who's doing an outstanding job, 2:27.05. Before this year, Ross Polakis had never raced. Track days, yes. Practice days, yes. Had never driven a competitive car race. He won the round at the last round of GT World Challenge in the AM class. He's doing an outstanding job.
And like a sponge with Jordan Love. Everything, you know, seeing the boys in Bathurst, actually, in town, I'm talking, not actually here at the track on Friday. Really enjoying that combination, what Jordan brings to the table, and as you say, has had a great learning year. That is actually very, very impressive in these conditions. 2:27.05. He's actually the fastest guy currently on track.
And following Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim around, which is a great performance. So this is a really good. I like this combo. Jordan Love has slipped straight into it. The young West Aussie, Carrera Cup Australia champion in 2019, has been racing for very, very good pro Mercedes teams in Germany for the last 2 years. And you talk about changeable weather conditions. He's been pounding around the Nürburgring in the NLS series over there in their series of endurance races. And while Bathurst is known for having mixed weather, the Nürburgring takes that to a whole new level. So he's pretty switched on when it comes to wet conditions in a Mercedes AMG.
And I am standing by for the brand new YouTube show, which he doesn't know about yet, which would be with his flatmate in Jackson Evans. I reckon that'd be a bit of fun, those two.
Yes. Knowing them both for a long time through their junior careers, some of it you probably couldn't put to air.
Correct.
Having shared a house with Jack Smith and Jackson Evans up here for the 1000K weekend, I'm just going to sit here quietly and not add to that. But yes, it would be fun.
It is so cool to see our Aussie talent doing great things, and Kiwi talent, the form of Jackson, doing great things overseas though, and following that dream to go and race professionally, which they're doing now at an extremely high level. This is a good little battle pack. Adrian Dietz is running fifth. He's got James Kandura, speaking of experience, behind him, and then Mark Sini following him around. We go back and find David Crampton in the KTM GT2 car, and Chris Batsios behind him. This is 11th and 12th on the road.
They've had some issues with that KTM across the weekend. I think they thought it was traction control initially, which was just upsetting, and maybe that has re-emerged here, but they tried all kinds of things to cure that on Friday, but that is not normal at that speed, is it? So having some sort of issue there, and finds himself down in now last place, 12th.
I would take a guess, Rusty, that KTM has gone into limp mode there, the way he's still able to power it. There's no obvious sign of smoke or anything coming out of it. Hasn't made contact with the wall anywhere, but it does sound like it's running at about 20% of what it would normally do in terms of speed and lap time. Babs?
I'm down here with Michael Caruso, first time in the GT car around Bathurst, and we've added rain. What do you reckon?
I don't know yet. I'll tell you when I have a go. Yeah, no, I haven't obviously done much running in the car before. I had my first run in the dry yesterday, which was good fun. And yeah, I get a real taste of it. Hopefully it dries out. It looks like it's going to head that way at least.
I can tell you what's weird is me being in a race suit without a helmet.
I'll tell you what, it's a good fit. I stand up and show everyone how good you look.
Look at this. I feel like MC Hammer. So, Jack Smith, you know, having a run in GT car in the rain around Bathurst, I couldn't think of much better.
No, it's actually not too bad. It's pretty good. The tyre works really well, and having that ABS is super handy. You know, the braking markers are, you know, kind of like supercar level in the wet. So it's pretty interesting. It's good fun.
All right, so good luck.
Thank you.
Fabian Coulthard there in the pit lane for us, and as we get set for some driver changes, hopefully in the not too distant future, they'll be busy down there. Our team, we go back to Adrian Dietz, who holds down fifth place at the moment from the car that the Kanduras brothers will share, and then Mark Sini on the tail of that pack. So we were just talking about Michael Caruso there before. This is the car that Michael will jump into as the KTM makes its way into the lane.
This car, part of a new class that SRO is gradually building. SRO, the global promoters of GT racing, called GT2. It's a more affordable entry point into top-level sports car racing. And in fact, GT2 cars will begin to run alongside fields within the Intercontinental GT Challenge, alongside the GT3 cars. They're not quite GT3 levels of performance. They're a little bit simpler. They've got less aero. They're more of an entry point car to step people into these races and then into GT3 cars. But they're a great thing. That's the first one in Australia. It is a wild piece of kit. There's more carbon fibre in that car than most of the rest of the paddock combined. It is entirely made of carbon, but it is a beautiful piece of engineering. They ran this car at the Bathurst 12-hour. The Wood brothers, Dale and Glenn, were among the driving
Glenn's
lineup.
down there, I think, isn't he?
He is. Trent Harrison doing a driver change now and jumping into that car. So they may be having a few little issues today, but that's a spectacular car and a sign of perhaps the future of GT racing in another class that will bolster fields around the world.
Certainly from a fan point of view, as you can see, I mean, that's the picture there that paints what Richard was talking about. I mean, that's what people gravitate to. They look at it, the way that the canopy comes off for the driver change, like that. Very cool piece of kit.
David's a lovely guy. He raced KTMs in the GT4 class, a lot of 12-hour and GT World Challenge Series experience in that car, and then upgraded to the GT2. First of its kind in Australia. Really hope we see more. Audi's got a GT2 car. I think Mercedes-AMG's got one under development as well. They're going to run in the Spa 24-hour race for the first time next year.
So we just saw that that canopy there that you were talking about. Kralsey try to close it, but see what's happening there. If you look down on the left-hand side of the driver there, the helmet radio plug is normally Velcroed to the top of his helmet, and every time he tried to close it, it was jamming the latch. So no stress for time, given that 120 seconds, sorry, for every pit stop that you make. So even though there's a little bit of awkwardness to that, there's no real stress attached to it. I have, just out of the blue, tried to fire a couple of text messages out down to the pit lane and tried to ask some engineering folk for some assistance in letting us know what the wet weather / dry tyre crossover lap time is. And
your call is important to us. Please continue to hold.
Surprise, surprise, lads. No, not even that. I've had a couple of responses back like, haha, I'm not telling you. So they're playing their cards pretty close to their chest down there. I reckon if we're doing sort of 205s, 206s, maybe a little bit more than that race pace, I would think maybe a 2:15, something like that, might be the crossover lap time we're looking for. So we're still 10 odd seconds away.
And that was exactly what it was at the 12-hour earlier this year. Within a couple of seconds of that was the time to put the slick tyre on, and because it happened about 5 times in that race. So yeah.
And a quick shout out to all my friends in the pit lane for not helping us with any information there. Thank you, guys.
Riding with the 888 entry, well done. Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim, who will share this car with Brock Feeney. Now this was one of 2 cars entered this weekend, and Prince Jeffrey's brother, Prince Abu Bakr Ibrahim, alongside Jamie Whincup, and unfortunately that car with Boo behind the wheel had a major incident at the top of the mountain, and we're going to shed a little bit more light on that. I think we're going to try and catch up with Boo. Here's Molly.
Well, your little dig was noted, AJ, but Prince Abu, great to see you here. Can you tell us firstly how you pulled up and how you're feeling after yesterday?
Just a little sore, but yeah, I'll be fine. Feeling good.
Really good to hear. It must still be pretty cool first time to the mountain to be watching your brother race. Are you learning a lot just from being here in the pits and soaking it all up?
Yeah, learn a lot just practicing and qualifying, but it's nice to watch it as well.
Oh, fantastic. Great to see you here, and best of luck as well at the bend.
Thank you.
So if we just spin the camera around as well. It's just gone really silent here in the pits, so I'll try not to make too much noise. We come through, see if we can grab Brock. Hello. Hey, Brock, how you doing? Have you got the helmet on so it's harder to get a word in?
Yeah, all good.
So can you give us any insight on what your strategy is? When are you going to be jumping in?
I got absolutely no idea. They told me to get ready on the first lap, so I think pit window opened on lap 2, so I'll sit here and they'll tell me when to jump in. But no, we're doing really good. Brad did a ripper job on the first few laps to get a good gap, but Jeffrey's motoring along very well at the moment.
And what's the feedback been from Jeffrey about the track conditions and how it's evolving?
I haven't heard since he's been racing, but at the start, he said there was a bit of fog and and a bit of the rivers at the chase and that, but it looks like it's dried up pretty well. Yeah, we'll get out and find out later on, but we'll wait and see what the weather does. Who knows if we'll end up on slicks or not.
We sure will. Thanks, Brock.
Cheers, thanks guys.
I want to say g'day to his dad, Paul. Paul Feeney is here at the mountain as well, a man who back in the day would muscle a motorcycle around here back at the Bathurst Easter races, and was very close with that group that were around Mick Doohan during the heyday of Mick's career. So Brock's come from a family. I can remember, this is how old I am, going when Paul Feeney was the Husqvarna distributor in this country to bike launches, and Brock was a little tacker. And, you know, I thought bikes might be the path he would go. He ended up choosing karts, and look where he's ended up now with Triple H. Really cool story.
And a terrific family. You're right, Paul is a good operator, and talk about bravery. Imagine just hoiking your leg over one of those things and setting off up Mountain Straight, knowing what you've got to do to lean into it across the top of the hill. It is crazy stuff. And we'll go back down to Molly Taylor. Molly, you're doing a brilliant job down there.
Oh, thank you, AJ. You might not believe it, but there is actually a pocket of sun that's come through. I'm standing in pit lane and squinting as I can see a bit of sun. There's lots of clouds around it, so I'm not sure how long it's going to last, but we do have some sunshine.
Thanks, Molly. And that actually raises a good point. I wonder if they're going to run this opening stint a little bit longer than perhaps they'd originally planned to try and get to a point where there's a wet weather crossover to put a dry tyre on at that first pit stop.
No doubt, absolutely no doubt, Krause, because yeah, you want to get to that. Last thing you want to do is, you know, stop 5 laps too short, come in, put a set of wets on, go back out. And knowing that you're going to go out, you know, for the next stint with your pro guy in there, will give the engineering guys in the pit lane that are trying to work that out on the fly some confidence to go, okay, let's run a little bit longer here. Let's go out on slicks. Even if it's a little bit damp, these guys will be able to deal with it. We can see a visual dry line starting to come in here, but it's always, and you know, we talk about it all the time, don't we? It's this crossover period that is arguably the most dangerous phase in a wet, drying track like this, because you know, you get confidence from behind the wheel where you're in the dry line and you're all okay and you've got grip and you've come from a wet track and you think, how good am I? I'm doing a stellar job. And then you drop the wheels out into that wet stuff and all of a sudden you think, oh, hang on a sec, this has just gotten on top of me. So it is really, really tricky.
Did you have a few moments like that, did you?
Continue to.
Pat on the back.
I'm having one now.
Harrison back in the lane with that KTM. So the issues that they were clearly suffering when they came in and then did that driver change a little while ago continue. Meantime, Brad Schumacher leading by 5.6 seconds over Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim as we click over rather the first half hour done in this 3-hour race. Let's go to Stubbsy.
Thank you. Just seeing that the KTM is back in. David Crampton was in the car for the first stint. David, can you just detail us the problems that you're having with it?
Yeah, unfortunately there's a mapping issue and it affects the turbo. So, you know, we've got no power. So it's literally not running the turbo at all. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. The car's been really reliable and, you know, we've had good results so far this year, but not today.
Gee, it's a sexy-looking beast, isn't it? We just see at the moment with the lid up on it. Everyone wants to see it, wants to know about it. What is it like at Bathurst at its best?
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, we're really quick down the straight. It's got 600 horsepower. It handles really well. It's not got the aero with the GT3, but it's a great car.
Fantastic. And just the problem we saw when you put the lid down too, it's a different way of getting in and out of cars, isn't it?
That was my error. I had my radio and drink cable hooked underneath it. So it's just a bit of a rookie error from me.
It's a different machine, but we love seeing it here. We've loved having you as part of the series this year. We'll see you again next year.
Yeah, for sure.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Stubbsy with David Crampton. KTM, Trent Harrison back in the lane, unfortunately. They'll be able to hopefully get that car back out and just use it as an extended test and development session for them.
This is going to sound a bit wild. Do we need sunglasses in the booth here? It is seriously glary now. So we've got ever-improving weather. We've got commentators with fingers crossed for dry conditions and dry tyres in the not-too-distant future, but the glare at the bottom of the mountain here is now a thing.
And the track is improving at a significant rate. It's almost a second a lap at the moment that they're getting quicker and quicker. So that cut-off point draws ever nearer when you can be confident to put slick tyres on this car and put the pro drivers in and let them loose.
And we're just following this little battle here with Adrian Dietz in the Lamborghini and James Konduras behind him. So this is a little bit of lap traffic going on. by the look of that. So Sini makes his way around as well. We were following the Adrian Dietz and James Kondouris battle that I just mentioned. Kondouris looking pretty racy in that car and looking like he was trying to make a way, find a way past Dietz. We've picked up the KTM once again. They look like they're not having any luck, unfortunately, do they? Oh, that's a telltale sign.
That's got turbo written all over it, doesn't it?
Hasn't it?
Mm.
Perhaps that's the moment that the turbo actually failed.
Yes, it could be.
That would be my call on that.
Yes. What's the line? If you watch it in slow motion, you can see the moment the heart breaks. That might have been it. It's got a 5-cylinder Volkswagen Audi Group engine in it, and as David mentioned, 600 horsepower. The thing is a rocket ship down Conrod Straight. Runs a different BOP to GT3 cars, so it is quicker than a GT3 car down a straight line, but less aero, so not as quick across the top. But ultimately a car that's capable of 6s around this place.
And do you know what weight it runs at?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I was surprised when he said it was 600 horsepower of coming out of that engine. That is crazy, but I guess in this category, as you mentioned, balance of performance is key, and so at that amount of horsepower, it'd be interesting to know what the weight is. Here's this battle that we referred to before, Rusty.
And Adrian did not want to repeat what happened, you know, about 15 minutes prior when he ran wide, but he's under siege here at the moment from James Kondouris as we go into the lane. KTM garage awaiting the return.
So they're clearing that garage there by the look of it, Rusty. We were very intently looking to see if that was some slicks being rolled out for some pit stops, but they're just being shifted out of the way. The team set the tyres up at the front of the garage so that if a car does turn up in the lane unannounced, and when I say unannounced, the drivers have a process that when they turn the pit lane limiter on at the start of the pit lane, you should always announce that you're at the pit lane to give team members, in case they haven't seen you on the telemetry, an understanding that you are there. But in this case, they want to drive the car straight in, so they'll clear a path, car in, and we've still got a bit of time up our sleeve. I'm sure they'll have a look at that and see if they can't fix that car and get back out towards the end of this race.
Ask a question, I will deliver. That car's balance of performance weight at the moment is 1,300 kilos. Dry weight's 1050, so it runs quite a bit of ballast, of course, with fuel and fluids and driver, but yeah, running at 1,300 kilos. So it's a fairly potent bit of kit with 600 horsepower.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very cool bit of kit.
Pace keeps improving, boys, and the lap prior, it was Brad Schumacher who was the fastest. Now Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim has clocked the fastest lap of the race so far with a 2-minute 23.3075. Brad's got a lead of about 5 seconds. It seems to eke out to about 5.5. It's 4.9 right now. On balance, he's done a ripping job in this stint, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And they've just dropped Ross Polakis a little bit. Ross down into the 25s now in car number 101, Harold's Racing Mercedes AMG. This is a good fight. Good drive out the final corner for the Canberran, James Kondouris. James has been racing at a very high level for more than 20 years. Started out in one-make Porsche racing in the Porsche Cup, moved into Australian GT. He spent time in Carrera Cup, but the one constant is that it's he and his brother that they go racing, which is outstanding. And the Superbarn Supermarkets business that they run.
That's the other constant, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. So in the ACT, but they're expanding their horizons gradually as well, which is great to see. In fact, the big story for them at the 12-hour early this year was a massive crash from Theo earlier in the weekend, and that team worked so hard out of Melbourne Performance Centre. They brought another car up from Melbourne, rebuilt it overnight, upgraded it to 2022 Evo specification, and we're back on track on Saturday to go racing, which was an incredible effort. So great supporters of GT racing in this part of the world, the Kondouris family.
And they are part of that Audi Customer Racing Melbourne Performance Centre group, which I've been involved in a little bit this week. And two really good guys, love their motorsport, absolute gentlemen, and they just, you know, love the fact that they go racing as two brothers.
And just while we're talking NBC for a moment, we saw a shot of Brad Schumacher there a moment ago. Typically, he's kind of run his own operation, but often in garages next door to NBC, but he appears to be more in the garage with them this weekend. Is that more of a sign of things to come there?
Well,
that crew?
Yeah, potentially. It's a quasi NPC works outfit, isn't it? He's got his own guys working on that car. He's got his own strategist. He's engaged Paul Scalzi, the engineer, to run that car for him this weekend. So that's under the Schumacher Motorsport banner. But yeah, garage next door. They sent this car, 55, down to Melbourne to be upgraded at Melbourne Performance Centre to the current specification. So it had a big upgrade before this weekend. It was running in 2018 spec, I think, before this weekend. So, yeah, semi-independent team, but with the arm of the big factory team around him to offer support and make sure he gets the most out of a customer program with Audi. And that's the whole idea of GT3 racing, is that customer support from the factory, from the local importers into people that buy the cars.
Yeah, and it's a really well-supported program. Could we go as far as saying it's a satellite team of Audi Sport Customer Racing in Australia? You're right. And Paul Scalzo that you mentioned is head of engineering at Brad Jones Racing. So there's quite a lot of supercars, familiar faces here within the pit lane this weekend, and he's there looking after this car from a strategy perspective.
Eagle-eyed viewers may have been watching the onboard there a moment ago. Was he doing a little something just to keep the glove dry? So it looks like he's putting his hand towards the
air conditioning system in these cars is brilliant, and it's interesting. You talk to drivers that come out of other cars where they're really, really hot cabin temperatures. They say sometimes you've got to turn these things down. So my take on it, there we go.
Yep.
Just getting a little bit of air flow up into the glove.
Maybe releasing some of the tension in the
little
hand?
screen at the top there? There is a little screen, that one beside the Cell Logic.
So the screens, one of them's a vehicle screen. The blue one's the one for the pit stop time, so they can manage their transit time from pit lane, because that 120 seconds is time from pit entry to pit exit. So you need to measure the time you're transiting as well as the time you're stopped. And if you go beneath that mandatory pit stop time of 120 seconds, the penalties are severe. That is 100% the air vent at work. And this was something we saw at the 12-hour. Kelvin van der Linde was a demon for... He'd run the whole way down Conrod with his hand on that, just getting some airflow up the wrist of his race suit and into the car. But these cars run air conditioning, and it is extremely effective. Very powerful stuff. So in warmer conditions like it is today, it may look overcast, and it is, and it's damp as well. It's very humid and quite warm outside. So you add your 10 or 15 degrees more for the inside car temp, the air conditioner will play a role. So that is what it is. It's a strange little quirk of running an Audi in GT racing, but the drivers will use it to their advantage.
I'm glad in that answer you shone a light on the pit stop time as well, because we have seen ultra minor breaches throughout the course of 2022, and they've been, when it's happened, you know, the deflation in the drivers and the teams is immense, because the process to try and nail that is not easily done, is it?
No, it's not, and that's why they've put those timers in the car to help it. And in practice, you'll often see them roll through a practice pit stop where they'll come into pit lane, they'll transit down the lane and then drive out to work out what the transit time is, and then you can work out how long you need to be stationary in your bay for.
And I guess from my end, guys, I'm just rattling through what you guys are talking about in my head, and it comes out as a little bit of, you know, in other categories I've been involved in, the pit stop time is so short that it's literally one driver out, one driver in, and within a couple of seconds you're on the ground and ready to go. Whereas for 120 seconds, the actual inbound driver can be sat there for such a long period of time that if you've got a stopwatch like that, it absolutely helps you regardless of radio comms.
I'm glad you can make sense of what Richard is saying, because that's very easily done. Apologies for my gibberish, but well done on the deciphering. Let's go to the lane. Here's Stubbsy.
Rusty, we just saw the vision there of Brad Schumacher. He's not trying to cool himself down with the air vent. In fact, it's an idiosyncrasy that he's developed throughout his career. Now, he had some issues with ill-fitting gloves earlier on in his career, so now it's just a habit that he's got into of making sure that the glove fits him properly and his fingers are all the way into the end of it while he's out there on track.
Nice work, Stubbsy. Have you got a little weird thing like that you do? Jonesy, come on. Do you do a little...
I just need to work out how I can phrase this. So
like any story
this got you out of a jam. 45 into the lane, so some pit stop activity about to really ramp up. Mike Sheargold at the wheel. Garth Walden, who runs a terrific outfit, standing by.
So he's the first one to blink from a strategy point of view. My question is, do they put a slick tyre on that car, knowing that you're going to put Garth Walden in it, who is a vastly experienced driver, raced in the Bathurst 1000, did Garth, in a privateer AU Falcon back in the day. Unfortunately ended up in the fence at the top of the mountain, but he's got a Bathurst start like his old man Brian does as well. World Time Attack champion. He's raced just about everything and runs a very, very good organisation at Garth Walden Racing, which this weekend is running cars in 4 different categories. So his mind's everywhere, and he's got to be racing car driver, and there are tyres going on that car. So new Pirellis to be fitted to car 45, and everyone will now pay attention to this car to see what his outlap's like and see if indeed it is the right decision to put slicks on.
Together with Mike Sheargold, they've been a good combination this year. I think he's really come on in leaps and bounds, and you know, just talking with them yesterday, Mike's loving being a part of that operation, that's clear.
And getting a lot out of it. I think this is the right time to put slicks on for a pro driver. We're hearing 888 will be in soon as well. So these guys have gone first, and this mirrors the strategy that we've been talking about, is get some seat time for your Ram first, run the Pro for what's not going to be a massively long stint. If this is any longer than 30 minutes, I'll be surprised for Garth, because you want the maximum amount of time at the end of the race for your Pro driver.
This pairing here, just quickly, sorry, before you go to your point, they've picked up a couple of Harold's menswear checks throughout the course of the year. They've done all right for themselves, haven't they?
Shopping spree at the end of the season going their way down to Melbourne.
I hear it's a very nice store too, probably somewhere where you're shopping, Rusty, rather than Kralsey and I.
Correct.
The real key thing here for me, Kralsey, is that 2-minute 20 lap time. We called it at about 2:15 earlier as the crossover from going from a wet weather tyre to a slick, and we base that on pro lap time, so maybe just with the AMs in the car there's that discrepancy. So we'll put a note down, and if my forecast doesn't come true and we get some more rain, then we'll keep a keen eye on that.
No, it's a good point. So yeah, Schumacher 2:20.04 last time around. Ibrahim in the 21s, Ross Polakis down into the 22. So the lap times continue to tumble.
Here's Brad. So the Reckless Brewing Kelso electrical entry is in. No doubt Tim Slade on standby with that seat insert that Michael Caruso had some fun with him chatting about in Caruso Let Loose earlier in the weekend. You can see Brock Feeney waiting as well for Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim, who is also in the lane. 888 is in the lane. There you can see it in the background.
Mate, you are coming all the way onto me, and you're in the pot.
Brad has a unique pit board. I won't say any more than that. We might get a shot of it later on, but
Hop on the wheel when you pull into the box.
They did say
on the wheel when you pull in.
They needed something to grab his attention to make sure he actually pulled into his pit bay.
It's certainly a pit board that works much better as a visual than trying to explain what it looks like. So no doubt we'll see that. Tim Miles also making his way into the pit lane. So it's always interesting in this type of a category. As soon as somebody pulls the trigger and comes in on slicks, everybody will follow suit, because you're going to lose so much lap time if you stay out for that extra lap. You know, it can be up to 2 or 3 seconds on that first out lap. And in the case of, say, if we go back to James Konduras, he just got past Adrian Dietz. If he stays out too long, Dietz comes in, hands over to Wally. By the time they cycle through their range of pit stops, you know, the Dietz wall car will be out in front of them. So you do need to keep that in mind when it comes to strategy. Just saw Mark Sini, he's gone by. So exactly what I just said has played out. So Adrian Dietz has made his way into the lane. And unfortunately for James Konduras, he's gone around one more lap here. So there's the over-undercut scenario happening here. And unfortunately, I feel like it's going to be in favour of the Dietz wall entry at this stage.
So watching for the timer to leave, watching for the timer to go green before you leave.
That's even interesting, Kralsey. So it's not just a countdown clock, but there's a red and green light on there, I assume, that can be operated once it gets, or preset, so that once it gets to the 120 seconds, it'll go green.
And they'll know what the time is from their pit bay to pit exit. So they'll have an understanding of what the time it takes for them to drop the car and leave to get to that control line, so they don't miss going short. So as an indication, 2 minutes and 1 second, 0.81 was the pit stop time for Tim Slade. So 121 seconds. That's pretty good. And it was much the same for 888, who's got Brock Feeney behind the wheel now. So They were within a tenth of a second. So relative to each other, that 4.5 second margin we saw between car 55 and 888 will be maintained after those pit stops. Fabian?
I'm down here in the Wall Racing Garage. Adrian Dietz has just come into the pit lane and overshot his pit box, which means the car's gone too far outside of the pit box, which means they haven't been able to get fuel in the car when the car arrives straight away. So that's cost him a little bit of time. David Wall's now in the car, Adrian's out, and they'll be on their way shortly.
Thanks, Babs. I'm pleased that David is getting a chance to do some miles again. I mean, he's a guy that's done some great things, from racing supercars to Porsche Carrera Cup and more. Very experienced set of hands to be paired with Adrian Dietz here.
And I just, as we look at this left rear wheel go on, I just noticed in the background, if once we get to the wide shot, if you have a look at the fuel hose there on the left-hand side, so it's interesting. Adrian must have overshot that box by quite a long way, because let's say that hose there is 3.5, 4 odd meters. You can't have it too long because it takes so long for the fuel to flow down from the churn into the car. But if you have an overshoot like that, you've got to push the car back. Yeah, good pickup, Fabian, and thanks for that update. So that, no doubt their pit lane time will be longer than others.
And it was 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So they've burnt an extra 10 seconds of track position for Wall Racing that David Wall will now need to recover. In comes the Hallmark Property Group car, so they've elected to leave Mark Sini out a little bit longer than everyone else, a lap different to most of his rivals. So they pit from third. Garth Walden will go past and get some track position there with those cars. So Sini in to hand over to Michael Caruso. Harold's Racing and Valencia Rosso have left Ross Polakis out for longer, and so too for James Konduras in the MPC Superbarn Audi. So they are now 1 and 2 on the road.
Michael Caruso getting ready to jump behind the wheel of the Hallmark entry. Mark Sini out.
And to give you an indicator of perhaps it was the right time to put slicks on his out lap, Tim Slade set personal best sectors for their car in sector 2 and 3, and Brock Feeney set the quickest middle sector of the car race on his out lap. So that's a pretty decent indication that yes, the time was right to put a slick Pirelli tyre on that car.
You're so used in these moments to seeing, you know, stress, speed. I mean, just to see it all calm down just a little, take your time, get it done, because you have the opportunity to do that.
Look at Garth Walden last time around, 2:16.9. So 4 seconds quicker than anyone had gone to that point. Actually, 6 seconds quicker. So the track is right. They're taking chunks of lap time out. As Ross Polakis comes into pit lane, so the race leader in, and Konduras will be the only car left to stop if indeed he doesn't come in this time around.
And that calmness that you talk about, Rusty, in the pit lane, it is designed there to be like that. You know, it's to take the stress out of it. The last thing we want to see, you know, particularly in cars like this, is a mistake from wheels going on or fuel being spilt in the lane. It just makes everything so much calmer. It takes out some of the risk attached to it, and even the fact that the fuel gets done before the tyres get done. It means that people aren't having to trip over each other or get out of each other's way. So it is designed that way by the SRO to make pit stops, you know, a part of the game and the sport, but without too much risk attached to it.
You've been involved in a program at Sepang recently with Ferrari, watching the emergence of young drivers. I mean, the other thing too here is that sort of rule or regulation gives us the opportunity to blend a couple of up-and-coming mechanics and things like that with some experienced guys, and to give them that exposure, the opportunity to do this without that stress, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because, you know, for anybody watching at home, you watch this and it looks really, really calm from the outside. These guys practice it all the time, but there's an intensity to it. You know, the mechanics that prep these cars, they want to go through the process. There's a system for it. You know, even you watch this guy on the left rear wheel here, put that wheel on, you know, you pick it up with your left hand, you got the gun in the right hand, you use your knees to push it on. All that is practiced so that it's a, you know, it's a muscle memory action, and you're doing it repetitively, but so that there's no mistakes, regardless of whether you got 120 seconds to do it or 20 seconds.
It's a beautiful sequence, a beautiful dance, and over time, you guys, even at a supercars level, and you know, multiply it by, you know, 5-fold in Formula One, that whole biomechanics thing and the way you execute the stop is so important, isn't it?
Well, you and I both know that. You sent me a video of the two of us when neither of us had grey hair from many, many years ago, and probably a little bit more here, trying to do it on some Audi Super Touring cars, and we were.
Oh man!
Would it be fair to say we were useless?
We
at
were
it?
terrible. Well, no, you would have been better. I was terrible.
No, I was useless.
There's some pace at the front of the field. Tim Slade last time around a 10.4. Brock Feeney 209.0, quickest lap of the race. So they're straight into the 9s and straight to work. A little bit of traffic here across the top of the mountain. Brock Feeney's got caught up behind Sergio Perez on the run through the Super Cheap Auto Dipper. And the problem is on a slick tyre, all well and good, you've got a huge pace advantage, but you go offline on a slick, it's still very damp. So that was a hairy little moment for both drivers trying to negotiate that through the S's.
And even if you've got two cars on wet tyres, we saw it before with Adrian Dietz and James Konduras trying to pass him. Every time he looked to the side of the Dietz Lamborghini and got onto that wet stuff, he went, oh, hang on a sec, there's nowhere near enough grip here. So imagine what that's like now on a slick. We do need this to dry out a little bit, Kralsey, all over the circuit, not just tram tracks.
Yeah, he lost 4.7 seconds in that middle sector dealing with traffic. So even with a 12-car field, traffic plays a role. It still has an influence in how this race plays out. And all of a sudden, what was a 9-second margin burst out to more than 11 seconds between car 55 with Tim Slade behind the wheel and Brock Feeney, 11.6 as they cross the line.
The Harold's Valanti Rosso Motorsport entry in GT4, driven by Chris Batsios, into the lane. So Sam Brabham likely to take over that car potentially. And that class, the GT4 class, being led by the car that Mark Griffith shares with Nash Morris.
And this phase of the race takes on a new personality, can I say, versus what we had before when we had the AM guys in there. Started off wet, they just needed to get into a rhythm, they needed to get some flow going, and the track would naturally dry out. You put the pro guys in, they're all wired to go as fast as they possibly can to attack people that they're racing and to get the job done and move on with it. But, you know, there's so much risk in here that you got to manage a little bit of that risk. Fabian?
Down here with Adrian Dietz, started off pretty wet. Track's drying out. How do you think it went?
Yeah, it was right. It was the right decision to start the race. The track conditions were fine. There was no standing water. It was full wet, but there was no standing water. Visibility was fine. Fortunately, we'd started close to the front, so we weren't in the spray, which makes things a lot easier. Visibility is always the issue.
Yeah, perfect. So you have a quick bite now. David Wall on the car.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll stay dry for the rest of the race. Otherwise, I think the rest of the race will just be about being on the right tyre at the right time.
We wish you all the best.
Cheers. Thanks.
Talking before about the difference here in GT racing with the stressing in a pit stop, there was an issue with the left rear on the Triple H car earlier in their last stop, but they had the time to get it back up on the jacks, make sure that the wheel was properly engaged before they dropped and took off. So that is the difference between what we regularly see here. Now, I just wanted to point out Jessica Dane. Now, she's on the tools here this weekend. Here she is over the back, JD on the back of the gear. So a few moments ago, she had the full face kit on, working on the refueling rig, and now there she is dishing out the food. So she's always working, Jessica Dane. We'll jump in here with Prince Jeffrey, who's hopped out. Jeffrey, how was it out there? The conditions, the track seems to be improving pretty quickly.
Yeah, the track was improving pretty quickly, but in the first few laps, it was really sketchy out there. There was a lot of rivers running, especially up the mountain. So yeah, I think it was one of the wettest we've got out this week. So yeah, but in the end, it was getting much drier, and yeah, I was just trying to get the water through the wet tires because it was just getting too hot in the end because the track was drying up so fast. But at the bottom section of the track and then on top was still a bit sketchy, I must say.
So what's the messaging to Brock in terms of the balance of the car and how it's progressing?
Sorry, the car felt good, yeah. So yeah, we have a long game, so we just have to play it smart, and then we'll see where we go from here.
I noticed when you hopped out of the car, you took off the helmet, you were ready to relax, and Roland came over and said, no, mate, get the helmet back on. Is that just in case we happen to have an issue with the car or safety car, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, we always have to be alert, and depending on the strategy that we're doing, whether, you know, we just got to be ready anytime right now.
You've got an endurance title that could be yours for the taking. All the best of luck for the rest of this race.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dubsy, who's been looking forward to putting that race suit on all weekend long. And he was right. There is a bigger picture at point with the Endurance Championship up for grabs. There are 2 rounds to the Endurance Championship. One of them was the Bathurst 12 hour. This is the second round, and Triple Eight had a really solid podium finish there with Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim, Shane Van Gisbergen and Brock Feeney doing the driving duties as the Daimler Trucks Brisbane GT4 car rolls into pit lane. Andy, great announcement yesterday that GT4 will be working with the Australian Production Car Series moving forward, so they will run as a separate championship within Australian production cars moving forward, which is great to see as a way to help develop GT4 racing in Australia.
Yeah, it was a great announcement yesterday. We just saw Mark Griffith depart that car, Nash Morris jump in to have a crack behind the wheel. But that announcement that you mentioned, Krause, for me personally, I feel like GT4 is a better fit in with that other category of production car rather than out here with GT3. So, wow, that's a huge moment for Jordan Love, but very, very well caught on the entry to turn 2 there. We're just keeping an eye on what happened at the end of that replay there. I thought for sure he was going to end up in the tyre barrier on the outside. So these guys are tricky because in terms of, I've done a little bit of driving in them, but the modern day one, these ones here particularly, a lot of chat around the car gives you really good confidence, really good feedback off the back of having so strong aero platform. But as soon as you step over that aero grip and all of a sudden you get a shift in the amount of aero that is produced on the front of the car, the back of the car, and all the way down the side and even under the car for, say, the likes of a Porsche, as soon as you overstep that aero grip, it just goes. And then you're a passenger, and it's a long time for the platform to reset itself. So they're pretty tricky cars, but thankfully, Jordan Love, he's well experienced in this type of racing, was able to gather it up.
And on that point, it's even a car-by-car thing, and we often see the AM drivers gravitate towards Mercedes AMG because it's a platform with a longer wheelbase, front engine, rear drive. It's a little bit more stable in the high-speed stuff. The Audis tend to be stronger through the faster corners, but to your point, they do snap when they go because they've got so much downforce. So it's really interesting to see the car-by-car thing, and it's sort of old-school Bathurst racing where there's strengths and weaknesses between the different brands for different drivers. And in outright raw, pure lap speed, you'd probably argue the Audi's the fractionally quicker car to have here at Mount Panorama. But in the case of the 12-hour earlier this year, we saw, especially in damp conditions, Mercedes AMG was such a stable platform to have for that longer race that they were the ones that ultimately came to the front.
Yeah, and that's what you need. You know, there's qualifying trim and then there's race trim, isn't there?
Yeah.
And qualifying trim for a one-lap shootout around this place is very different to what you need for a 12-hour run. And, you know, without boring everyone to detail, the center point for aero balance is the bit that gets shifted around on these cars. Molly?
We're down in Garth Walden Racing Garage, and we've seen the few extra laps people were doing on those wet tyres as the track was dry. And so just wanted to have a look at, these are the front tyres off the car 44 entry. So you can see they've got quite a lot of pickup. They're a bit second-hand, and if we just walk across to the tyres that have come off Mike Shugold's car, you can see that they're in much better condition, and that was only a couple of laps different. So you could see just how much stress they were putting on these wets when the track was drying out. And speaking to that, we'll see if we can grab a word with Mike as well. Mike, well done. You guys were the first ones to make the call to come in on the slicks. So looking at the condition of all the different tyres there, you must be pretty happy with that one.
Yeah. So, like, the grip level was getting better and better and better, and I was going quicker and quicker and quicker, and then just the tyres were getting, like, too warm and too much pressure, and you couldn't tell which way the car was going to go. I started going slower, and, you know, Garth's a pretty experienced hand, so I said, look, it's up to him, and he said, yeah, give me a crack. So we went out and we got good pace relative to the other AMs at the moment, so yeah, happy with the call for now.
Yeah, we could see when Garth went out, there was purple times coming up, and we can see now that you guys are in the lead in that category, so everything to play for.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully we just keep pushing on, and then I'll get back in and keep it clean, and we're in a good spot.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Molly.
We also saw one Dean Canto down here letting a bit of tyre pressures out. And Marcel as well, we'll chat to you. We were just looking at the different tyre conditions. Yours looked pretty second-hand on the front. That would have been an interesting couple of laps, laps before you came in.
Oh, it definitely was. It was a bit hairy, especially coming into the last corner there. It was not wanting to turn in at all. It felt like a big old sponge, but we managed to bring it in, and hopefully it stays dry for the rest of the race. Fingers crossed.
Hey, what's your latest intel on the weather?
I spent all morning looking at it, and I'm not going to dare look at it any longer. So it is what it is now. The race has started.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Joined by Mark Griffith, a familiar face in GT racing. Mark, you've been out there. Give us a report on the conditions and how the car is.
Excellent. Starting down the back in the GT4, wet, and then it was wet. But it was all fun, and it's enjoyable to drive in the wet at times. You get a bit of slip sliding and sideways, and I used to rally, so that's me. It was fun. And then the track dried out, but it dried out really quickly. So you went up the top and you weren't sure it was fog, but it wasn't. It was the steam coming off the road. So the track's dried out well. But yeah, first good stint. I'm happy. We're all good.
Wet sounds like the sort of music collection that Greg Russ would have, but we'll leave that for him. Wanting to know about Nash Morris, what sort of message would you give to him about how the car is handling? Obviously a fast young kid with a bright future ahead.
I just said to him, have fun. He's smart enough. He's got a good teacher in his dad, and he's driven the car last weekend, or the other weekend, and did a fantastic job. So this is his time just to enjoy, and yeah.
Are you still learning as well? I mean, you have got the dude over your shoulder here. You picking up a few things still?
I came in, the dude gave me a high five. Like, I'm impressed. I'll go home happy now.
Well, mate, let's hope you're even happier because you might get a trophy at the end of the day. All the best.
As long as everyone stays safe, that's the main thing.
Well said.
Cheers. Thanks.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And I'll own that 80s and 90s collection. No problem at all for me.
I think he was more of a Duran Duran kind of guy, Rusty.
I'll own that too. 2:05.26. Quickest lap time we've seen so far in this race. It belongs to Brock Feeney, who you ride with now for Triple Eight Johor Motor Racing. Aboard the Mercedes. Little relax of the arms on the wheel as you go down Conrod.
Yeah, relax of the fingers as well. Just make sure that you're not gripping that steering wheel too tight. I think it was Jack Brabham that said holding onto the steering wheel is like holding onto a small bird. You want to hold onto it so that it doesn't fly away, but you don't want to choke it, do you, and kill it. So that was his theory, was don't grip the steering wheel too hard. To your point, Rusty, 2:05.2 from Brock Feeney. It's really just happened over the last sort of 4 to 5 laps. They've come down from the sort of 2:15 mark that they were at. And you're right, it's a 4:9. So this is racy, and it'll be courtesy of a fair bit of cloud cover here. Not a lot of UV on the circuit. So the watts per square metre of UV rating out there will be very low, which equals fast lap time.
The watts per square metre rating. Forward to a deep dive into that. That's the kind of thing that gets me fired up. I like that.
It's a good little reference to know what sort of UV we're dealing with, mate, and the tyres don't like high UV rating. Fabian?
Down here with Brad Schumacher. You started the race in the wet. Now it's drying out. Had something to eat. Looking forward to getting back in the dry?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to jumping in the car with some slicks on the dry circuit. It's like 12-hour take 2. Went out there again and did all the difficult stint this morning with the rain and obviously drying circuit. So got Tim in the car now. He's doing a great job, and yeah, looking forward to jumping back in.
The boys noticed from the in-car camera you have your right hand off the steering wheel a little bit. Can you talk us about that?
Look, it's just a niggling habit that I started years ago. When I first started motorsport, I bought a pair of gloves and they were a little bit too big, and I used to have to always like roll the glove on the wheel to keep them pulled on, and it's just stuck. I'd love to stop it, but for some reason I can't, and yeah, it's a bit annoying actually, but we're running with it.
No worries, Tim's doing a good job. We wish you the best of luck.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Babs.
They're good mates and have known each other for ages, and I love those little subtle things that creep in with race drivers over time, little habits that they form that almost become a security blanket, don't they? You've got to keep, you're used to doing it, so you do it again.
Yeah, and look, I think motorsport is typically a game for people that are sort of borderline undiagnosed OCD. You know, we love going round and round in circles and repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And
get back to my spreadsheet here. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Numbers. We need laps, and we need to do the same thing over and over. You know, and that's what Brad's talking about, isn't it? Once you get in those habits. And there's the other element of it that your brain is consumed with what you're doing so much on the racetrack that he probably doesn't even know he's doing it anymore. Yeah. The last thing I need to put a full stop on this for us guys is that none of us picked it as that. We all thought he was trying to cool himself down. So, you know, credibility is out the window from the comms box at the minute for us.
The cooling thing is legit. I will say that at the 12-hour, there were people
own it together, Kralsey. Nobody's getting singled out.
There were people using it to cool themselves down. And my spreadsheet's got me through a few 12 hours there, Rusty, so you leave it alone, Stubbsy.
Thank you, boys. Ross Balakis is alongside me. Ross, detail to us how your race is coming as we get through this duration now.
I think the first part of it was to get through that first stint, especially being my first time here, being wet. I thought we did a really good job. We set some really good lap times. Started to get used to it when the track started drying up. But overall, Jordan's in the car now, doing a great job and good strategy to really push on and get a good result.
Ross, how was that for you? I mean, racing here in anger is hard enough for the first time, let alone in those sorts of conditions and with these guys around you.
I'll tell you what, it's not easy. It was a pinch myself moment, still in the car, but I feel like I've been doing it all weekend. But, the wet conditions, we've had it all year, being my first year as well. I've really got used to that, so, yeah, I'm comfortable in it. So, let's see how we go for the rest of the weekend.
Managing Director of Harold's, and you've bought in this team, you've built it up, you've got the couple of cars, you've got the Pole Award as well that you're sponsoring. You're loving being part of this, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I've loved motorsport since I was a kid, but to have this opportunity now to actually have the team race, again, it's just, I'm so happy to be here and be part of it. It's just an amazing experience.
Now Jordan's such a well-credentialed driver to be out there now to bring this thing home and see what he can do for you. The sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, I think you saw what he can do yesterday. I mean, Jordan's an internationally recognised driver and he's doing a fantastic job, but he's also really gives me comfort as well and a lot of driver training, so that's been a really good thing and it's a great partnership so far, so really happy with Jordan's performance.
Ross, it's been great to have you this year. Congratulations on your efforts and go well for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
I've had the honour of handing over a couple of those Harold's checks. They've been received very well in the pit lane, and it's awesome to have those guys as a part of GT World Challenge.
Yeah, great Melbourne-based family-run business. So Ross now second generation leading that firm, and he's been a passionate motorsport supporter. Was introduced to it via Peter Hackett and the Mercedes-Benz AMG driving experience. A lot of days with Hollywood and his team around the racetracks. Chris Baxios, who also is involved in the business, he's in the GT4 car, so they decided that the time was right to go racing, and they've built a really good program, investing in the category via sponsoring the Pole Award as well. They've got some big plans for the future. They partnered up with a really good race team as well. So Valenti Rosso Motorsport, headed up by Josh Hunt, the racer, Chris Papadopoulos, who at the time was Kimi Raikkonen's Formula One race engineer at Renault, and the Lotus team. So really good wealth of experience and information down there to build that program. Molly?
Mark Sini, pretty solid start from you guys. Tricky conditions. How was your stint?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, the conditions this morning were pretty testing, and as it dried up, to be honest with you, to finish the full stint on the wet tyres was pretty difficult. Just couldn't find enough water for them.
Now you've got the young apprentice Michael Caruso in the car with you as well. He hasn't really done a lot of laps in that car, so what's the feedback been like? He's doing a pretty solid job out there.
Yeah, he's going okay. I mean, it takes a little while to get used to these cars and what they can do. Unfortunately, we got cut short in practice and wet practice yesterday, so he's getting his head around it now. It'll be fine.
Any strategy intel you can give us?
Get to the front and stay there.
I like it. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
For someone who treats motor racing like his game of golf, he handled that like an absolute pro, didn't he? Just fully flat-batted Molly. No chance of knowing what the strategy was concerned. We're 1 hour into this, an hour 50 remaining in this event at Bathurst. Still lots of great things to come your way in our coverage this afternoon, including the final of the Turtle Wax Trans Am special one-off event that we've had here at the Mountain, and what's set to be the title deciding race of TCR. So stick around for that, whatever you do. Let's go back to the lane. Fabian?
I'm down here with Tim Miles. That was a good opening stint. See you pass a couple of cars.
Yeah, the car feels absolutely fantastic. So, and you know, the beginning being wet was a little hairy, but the car felt great, and so we made a couple of spots. Jack's in there now doing a fantastic job.
You're normally known for your Porsche driving. First time in the Audi. How do you compare that?
Oh, this thing's so much quicker, so much more aero, plus it's got some electronic aids for us old fellas, so I found it quite enjoyable, to be honest.
Those electronic aids would have been pretty handy in the wet.
Yeah, very much. I actually had to turn them down towards the end, but they were great at the beginning, yes.
All right, wish you all the best. Good luck.
Thanks, mate.
He's a character that's been around motorsport in a business sense very successfully behind the scenes for a number of years. And in addition to the racing that he's talking about here, he enjoys a bit of Formula Ford action in New Zealand when he can, over the summer months in particular, things like the Lady Wickram Trophy and so on.
He's part of a little mafia out of a small town called Ashburton, which is about an hour south of Christchurch, and Andy McElray, and there's a bunch of other guys Paul Cruikshank came out of there. John Evans, father of Jackson Evans, and that the Evans clan. So they all sort of gone motor racing and all been very, very successful. And Milesy's a great bloke. He's been very successful in business, in his company, and involved in buying and selling of businesses for other people. So he's a very smart man in that, but just a great character to have in the paddock.
And you talk about him loving Formula Ford. He's going back there next weekend to have a race in one that he still owns over in New Zealand. He was a director of Tasman Motorsport when I was there. He's a huge supporter of Greg Murphy's, been massively instrumental in his racing career over a long time. But he just loves the sport in general. You know, he's well connected and just a really, really good guy to be around.
Let's be honest, we always admire anyone who could sell something twice, don't we? So now, we've got 2 hours to go, so let's bring you up to date. If you've just joined our coverage, wonderful to have you with us here for the Supercheap Auto Bathurst International. Some highlights of hour 1 of GT. We got underway in wet conditions here at the mountain. Brad Schumacher grabbed the lead.
Hard to believe that this was little more than an hour ago, and it was really wet, and these cars were doing 2-minute 30 laps. They're 25 seconds quicker now than they were an hour and 10 minutes ago. A few little moments. This was Tim Miles, we just heard from down in the lane, shortcutting across the top. He'd only just got past Adrian Dietz and worked his way up into the top 5 it was at the time. This was Trent Harrison. Unfortunately, he and Dave Crampton had some issues in the KTM. Smoke pouring from the beautiful GT2 car, and that car was driven into the garage, and that is where it remains.
This guy here, Mike Sheargold, pitted and was the first to kind of blink, and we saw an improvement on lap times, Andrew Jones, once that flurry of activity started, didn't we?
He was the first to blink, and everybody else followed him in. We saw this moment for Jordan Lovett, turn 2. A little bit of a rear nervous moment, but he was able to gather it up. Brock Feeney was going incredibly fast and continues to. He set the fastest lap so far at a 2:04.5. Brad Schumacher and Tim Slade, who is currently at the wheel of that beautifully turned out local Bathurst Audi. But look at the gap here, Rusty. The gap has come down from about 5.5 seconds, and it now currently sits at a visually close 1.5 seconds.
Do you know, it was, as you rightly point out, in that first hour, it sort of hovered about that 5.5 second margin. But once the pit stops were completed, it actually was about 10 seconds. So Brock has done a super job to chip away, get it to 1.5 seconds and closing from what you can see on that onboard. Feeney has the fastest lap of the race, a 2:04.50.
And it's in favour of Brock Feeney at the moment. We can see it, guys, but it's to the tune of about 1.5 seconds a lap. So it's not a case of is he going to get Slady, it's a case of when and how quickly is he going to be able to get by him, Kralsey.
And how much of a fight does Tim Slade put up, knowing there's still an hour and 46 worth of racing to go? He'll fight for it, yes, but there's still another AM stint to go, and then the pros will get back in the car. They've got to do 3 compulsory pit stops, but now they've got to do 2 compulsory stops in an hour and 45. But that's an indicator, as AJ's point, of how much lap time that Feeney's taken out. That's a look down at 888 Race Engineering, and we're understanding there is another stop coming up. So they're not racing to fuel economy, they're racing to driver time and optimising the final stanza of the race when you're going to put your pro driver back in the car for the race to the checkered flag. So this could almost be a road test of what we're going to see a little bit later on in the race.
And the value, the battle between the AMs, between these two cars is going to be absolutely worth watching. Schumacher did a great job in the opening stint. We know how good Prince Jeffrey has been in this car throughout season 2022.
Is this a case, though, of a little bit of young bull versus old bull? Slady's been around a long time. He knows how these longer races play out. Is he just, you know, making sure that that car goes around? To your point, Kralsey, is Brock Feeney going, how good is this thing underneath me? I'm just going to drive it as fast as it'll possibly go. I get the feeling, guys, that if we needed to, you know, wind the switch up to the 11 from Slady, he's probably at about an 8 at the minute. If we were in this situation with 15 seconds to go, I feel like Slady would be able to turn that dial up a little bit more.
He might need to do that. Just communication from 888 to Brock Feeney. Talk of a pit stop soon. He might do it from the race lead, right up behind the Kelso Electrical Audi, who defends in the braking zone. Well, that's the answer to the question, how hard does Tim Slade want to hold on to the race lead? The question mark is now, is there going to be a pit stop? And I think it'll be, yes, it will be this lap. He sold the dummy one way and now sends it into pit lane with a lot of commitment.
one. Triple the pits, triple the pits.
And gets it to 40 k's an hour. So
Righto,
this
mate,
is
you're
the first
coming
roll
all
of the
the way
dice for
down
Brock
to me,
Feeney.
all the way
How's
down
the
to me. You're
games
stopping
going
in the
down,
box.
Conrad?
You are getting out of the car. Just switch the engine off on your way in. Switch the engine off on the way in. Disconnect your helmet air and loosen your belt. Disconnect your helmet air and loosen your belt. You are getting out of the car.
270 or thereabouts k's an hour while that's happening.
Remembering engine off on the wheel when you pull into the box. Engine off on the wheel.
The repetition of those radio messages is actually really important, isn't it?
And that was going to be my note there, Rusty, was just listening, and we paused so that everyone else could hear it. But just the communication is so important from the moment that Brock Feeney, even coming into the pit lane, did you hear him call 3, 2, 1 in the lane? So he's giving everybody as much notice as he can, and then the car controller, person that stands at the front of the car there, will have a pattern and a repetition written on the board to be able to talk through the driver. And the last thing you want to do is ask them to unplug their radio. No point in doing that too early because you lose all the messaging. So that's really, really important stuff to get as a driver and get in that rhythm as the car controller for these pit stops.
Just love the audio cues. Check your radio. Is it working? Is the pit stop timer working?
35 seconds.
The communication in professional race teams, I just never cease to be impressed about the process-driven
Right to
nature
start
of
it up
it.
with about 15 seconds to go. Right to start it up. There's nothing in the lane at the moment, so you should be right to go when you're ready.
The other thing,
About
I think
18
now,
seconds
if
to
you're
go.
car 55, you
That'll
pit
do,
now
mate. Get out of there.
because
Get out of
otherwise
there.
there's a risk of an undercut situation occurring when Jeffrey Ibrahim gets back out onto the racetrack and Tim Slade's still out there. So I wonder, to be fair, I'm going to contradict myself. It could actually be an overcut because you could have the pro versus the AM driver. So
Watch
maybe
for the
you do
green on
keep
exit,
Tim
watch
Slade
for the
out.
green on
And
exit.
he's going to go very close to going a lap in front here.
And I was going to counter that with you. Yeah, there's no point in us both agreeing.
No,
Krause.
okay. I'll go one way, you go the other.
I was going to counter it that at the minute this is the opportunity for Slady to pull
Build
a
some
gap
margin.
over that car so that when they come in and they put Brad Schumacher in there, that he's got a nice little buffer up his sleeve. But, you know, what we're going at the other side of that, though, Krause, is that Ibrahim is at the wheel. By the time Schumacher gets in, he's up to speed, and then it'll negate itself a little bit. So it's a bit like getting a rubber band and sort of pulling it out and stringing it out. Eventually, it's going to come back towards itself.
I was correcting as I was thinking of what I was saying. I was going, no, that's wrong. Change your mind. No, well point, good
Not
point.
wrong,
well made.
not wrong. Just different. It's
Different.
okay.
No, I agree.
We'll see how it plays out.
Can we spend a moment on the value of people in both these race teams for a moment? I mean, you've rattled off a couple of them a little earlier in the coverage, Krause, but I mean, in the Triple 80 example, I mean, the likes of Andrew Simpson, who we saw before with the headset on, with Roland Dane over his shoulder. I mean, Andrew's been around supercars, people know Simo, but in more recent time, his focus has been around the Johor Motor Racing project, hasn't it?
Yeah, he went from being heavily involved in Triple 8 and their greater race team, and he was looking after Sachs and some damper. He was customer relations officer for some their damper products that they were offering. But he's just a very, very clever guy, really smart, really calm, and you know, no doubt he's influencing some of those pit lane calls and the communication that you hear from within this group. And I thought it was a great move for them to put him in charge of this program. He's absolutely a really good guy. So Jack Smith into the pit lane here. So we'll see this as another drive change. You could see Tim Miles in the background there. No rush again, all very calm. We're going to continue to say that, aren't we? Because we're so used to it. But Jack just looking like he's giving a pump of the pedal, sort of feedback to Tim. These guys, you can see the visual height difference between them in favour of Jack by about 20 odd centimetres over Tim. He's only a little bloke. So Jack takes his seat insert out. Tim puts his in. It's more akin to the one that Michael Caruso or Tim Slade are using in their cars. Fair bit of buffer. And then Tim will jump into that car, make sure he's belted himself in. There is a little bit of work going on at the back of this car here, just to check that the brakes and everything are working okay. I assume that's off a message from Jack and just visually reading his body language. So they'll drop that car down in a sec, fuel in, tyres done, and then they'll wait for that mandatory stop time to count itself down.
The other thing that's going on is Jordan Love is pressing on. So he set the fastest middle sector of anyone in the race and sets that car's personal best lap with a a 2-minute 4.8. So he's now up to second place in the Harold's Racing car and making some track time and position. So they were about 45 seconds away from the leaders before this round of pit stops. So much in the same way that the Kelso Electrical team are keeping Tim Slade out, so too Harold's Racing keeping Jordan Love out on the racetrack to try and get back a little bit of that time. Because, Rusty, with a smaller field, the chance of a safety car is a little bit lower, and that means the opportunity to get time back is down to raw car performance rather than waiting for a fortunate safety car. This is not a battle for the lead. This is a battle to stay on the lead lap. So Tim Slade is now right behind Jeffrey Ibrahim
and applying the blowtorch.
Yeah, to put him a lap behind, but they are out of sequence. They're 420 seconds apart in terms of pit stop time. Does he go? He's not quite close enough. You can hear the effect of the toe down Conroy, the extra RPM, the 5.2 litre Audi V10 screaming away.
Oh, went quiet because it's a joy to listen to now. Are they pitting? They are. So Kelso Electrical on standby. Right of your screen is the 44, which is in as well. So
nails the line. That is awesome. Tim Slade, the commitment. There's Brad just getting himself fired up. That was a smart decision because they were starting to lose time. So that time that they'd made up with the Pro driver versus the AM, they were starting to lose with the Pro driver being bottled up behind the AM and not being able to get by.
Kelso Electrical crew go to work here. You stand by for the driver change as well.
So 38 minutes behind the wheel for Tim Slade in that stint. Remember, 100 minutes is the maximum time any one driver can spend in the car for the race. So Tim has about an hour's worth of driving left. So that's when we're going to look for that final pit stop. I'd expect to see Brad Schumacher in that car for most of the 36 minutes that are left in this hour. And when that clock gets below 60 minutes, that will be their window to put Tim Slade back in this car, get fuel in it, probably throw some tyres at it if they've got a new set, if it is indeed still dry, and then send it to the finish. But that was a good call because they were starting to lose lap times being caught up behind the AAA. So this rejoin, it's going to be F1 spec in terms of how the rejoin works. Because it's 120 seconds for the total pit lane time. Am I having some issues on the left rear corner here?
There's some tape work going on there at the moment, so
we've got time to do it. So
there's a little bit of body panel at the back of this R8 Audi, and the tape that they've done, what they've done there is, and we saw a couple of little issues at this in testing last week at Phillip Island, where the air comes over the top of the car, and that little gap that you can see there, if it opens up a little bit, the air gets in behind it and it pops the piece up, so it almost becomes a massive big gurney, but not producing downforce. It's like having a drag out the back, or a big balloon out the back of you, so it slows you down in a straight line speed. So that's what that tape will be doing.
So 2 minutes and 7 seconds in the lane for Schumacher. So it was a longer stop. They lost about 6 seconds through that process, but net gain, keeping Tim Slade out that extra lap or two, has bought them what's going to be about 6 or 7 seconds. But then he's out on cold tyres and on a racetrack where the grip level he's not familiar with, because remember when he pitted, he was doing 2-minute 20s. He's going to go out and be in the 6s now. So Jeffrey Ibrahim has had a lap worth of experience and just did a 2-minute 10.7 on his first flyer.
Here's our rubber band moment that I mentioned before, Krause. You know, we've stretched it out. These two cars are definitely going to come closer together here, and it'll be in favour of Ibrahim. It'll just be a case of how quickly can he close that gap.
Approaching the half race distance here in this 3 hour. We'll wait for the readjustment of the times from the completion of those stops, but maybe a little shout out to the team that could. David Wall and Adrian Dietz currently second in the standings in that Lamborghini. So worth keeping an eye on those two. They've been a little off the radar in the last half hour.
David Wall is an incredible race car driver, isn't he? And he continues to punch out incredible race results while running a very successful race team, Wall Racing, in contention to win the Super Cheap Auto TCR Australia Championship a little bit later on this afternoon with the factory Hondas. David Wall has finished in the top 5 in Carrera Cup every year since 2016. It's extraordinary what he continues to punch out, and he jumped into this car on Friday and within 5 or 6 laps was in the 2-minute 4s again. So he's an incredibly versatile driver, underrated, I think, relative to what perhaps his supercar career delivered, but in other categories he has been so good, and he's a really great representative for our sport.
And he's super talented. I'll argue that with anybody any day of the week until I'm not standing anymore. He's a ripper guy as well. This is an older generation car as well, Crailsy, and spoke to Dave early in the weekend. He said that they're still continuing to try and develop it. They've done a geometry change in the front of that car, and he feels like it's the best it's ever been up here around Bathurst. He said particularly across the top of the hill and coming down the hill, it's just really confidence inspiring at the moment, and the lap time is showing that.
And they've taken it to some great places around the world, haven't they?
Absolutely.
Japan and all sorts of great missions to go racing.
And being super competitive everywhere they go.
Hallmark entry is in the lane. You can see the crew to your right waiting for that car to pull up. And there's some of the stuff that Andrew Jones was talking about before, the checklist to go through for the car controller. And that's not exactly what we were hoping to see happen. But anyway.
We might see a marker adjustment to that for the next time that the radio comms come on to say, hey, crews, don't hit the board. Might be added.
So Mark Sini will jump back in, notched up his 350th Porsche Carrera Cup Australia race at the Gold Coast earlier this year. So the most experienced competitor in one-make Porsche racing in Australia. He's a great guy to have a chat to. Loves a banter, but still as passionate about the sport as we've seen. Here it is.
Radio check, nod, cop that.
Talk about hitting your marks. Don't mean literally.
You do need to be careful with that though, guys, and we saw it before where if you run too long, then the fuel hose can't get in there. The other thing I quickly noticed there while you guys were talking was, as a default, they went out to the back of the Sini entry and they ran a piece of tape across the gap between those two pieces of bodywork that was having issues on the Schumacher Slade entry. Now this is what we were talking about.
It's the rubber band, the AJ rubber band at work. So with warm tyres and some understanding of the track conditions, Jeffrey Ibrahim has dragged that time back out of the Kelso electrical Audi, and it's officially 0.8 of a second, but don't need me to tell you that. He is locked in on what will be the net race lead when we see Jordan Love pit. So they're running Jordan Love a long way into this race in the Harold's racing car, so he's still the leader at the moment. He's got a minute 19 over David Wall, who have just been following around. Ibrahim's got a great run out of Murray's corner. Is there an opportunity to look down the inside at turn 1? Not quite, but he is looking racy. Mercedes versus Audi once again. It's been the story of the year in GT World Challenge. It's been the story here at Mount Panorama in GT racing for the last couple of years, and it continues again. And that Audi with a bottom end grunt, the big 6.2 litre normally aspirated V8, it fires out of slow corners so well. And often that concertina effect, you get the ebb and flow out of a heavy stop, a slower corner, and then the drag up the hill. The Merc can pull some of that back because it's got so much bottom end relative to the more freer revving, higher, less torquey V10 in the Audi R8.
And keep in mind what we've just seen there, Crailsy, is the advantage off the back of pit stops and tyre warmth and tyre temperatures coming up in favour of Ibrahim. But when we really look at this and cut it up, Brad Schumacher was the fastest qualifier in the AM session at a 2:05.3. So as soon as he gets enough temp into the Pirellis on that Audi, which is what we're seeing now, he's starting to stretch that margin back out. So this is going to seesaw quite a bit here over this stint for these two guys.
So what you're saying is that in the AM sessions, the Audi's going to pull away, but in the Pro sessions, the Merc's going to come back. So we could get to that final stint with the Audi a couple of seconds up the road of a slightly quicker Merc, Tim Slade versus Brock Feeney. That's the scenario we're looking at after the final pit stop. Exciting.
Absolutely we are, and the other part of that is Rusty's fired his spreadsheet back up, so keep an eye on what those fluctuations look like over the two different stints between AMs and Pros.
Unlike my friend Richard, it's vacant, it's empty. There is nothing I have to offer. Can I just draw your attention to GT4 for a moment? The gap might be a minute 18 between Nash Morris and Sam Brabham, but those two young blokes at the wheel of the car, how's the comparo of their fastest lap time so far? The difference between them, 0.04 of a second.
The other thing that's occurring here, gentlemen, is that Jordan Love is pulling significant time out of the lead. Now, before that pit stop sequence, the car number 101 was 45 seconds behind the race lead. Right now, if he stopped now for 120 seconds, so he's a minute and 51 back to Jeffrey Ibrahim. So that's a net gain of about 20 seconds in raw pace from Jordan Love. So they're slowly playing themselves back into this race.
And at the halfway point, there's two distinct strategies going on for me here, Kralsey. There's the Jordan Love and also David Wall scenario playing out where, and no disrespect to the AMs in those two cars, they're not as fast as the AMs that are driving the Schumacher car or the Ibrahim car. So they're going down a different path, and what we're seeing is Jordan Love and Dave Wall being left in those cars. They're trying to bridge that gap, get it a bit bigger before they put their two AM guys in. And it'll be interesting. There'll be a reset period here with, to your point, Kralsey, with about an hour to go, where we're going to see those two strategies from Love and Wall get back on a similar one to say everybody from Schumacher back.
And then kind of the third tier of that, if you will, the Kourouris brothers. They're currently 5th in the standings, both pretty consistent in their lap times. What was their best so far is a 2:10.96. Okay, that's quite a margin off the likes of a Jordan Love or a Brock Feeney, for example. But that consistency, if they keep playing that way, that could end up a pretty handy result for them.
And they're also racing for GT3 AM in the without having a pro driver in that car. And their nearest competition is Mike Sheargold and Garth Walton, who are further down the field in 8th position, and they've got quite a bit of track position ahead of them. So it's that race within a race in GT that we love. Stubbsy?
Thank you. Tim Slade's just jumped out of the car, just refueling the system, so to speak. Slade, a nice battle out there with young Brock Feeney all over the back of you. Talk us through how it's coming together for you so far.
The track was definitely the right time to go to slicks. Probably could have gone a lap or two earlier, I think, but got to take into consideration the driving times as well. So wanted to try and extend Brad as long as we could. Just kind of ease into it. But I don't know, didn't really have much pace. So Brock mowed me down pretty quick there.
In terms of how it plays out now for the rest of the race, how do you see yourself shaping up against the others?
I'm not sure. I think Brad should have some pace over the other AM guys, but I'm definitely not as quick as the other Merc guys. So I'm not sure how we're placed relative to others strategy-wise, but it's just all about doing your driving times from here on.
Well, you got the right man behind the wheel, as you said, one of the best AMs out there. So best of luck holding on.
Thanks, Stubbsy.
Soaking up a bit of that magic Audi sound for you as Brad does that reflex action again with his right hand, that kind of trademark move. And that's on the Jack Smith, Tim Miles entry up ahead. So Tim at the wheel at the moment, currently 6th outright. They crest the top of the mountain.
Oh! Yeah, Tim was wide. He was trying to do the right thing, I think, to let Slade go. I'm talking Tim Miles, to let Slade go down the inside, but then ultimately bailed across the runoff area. And now he's got the same problem with Jeffrey Ibrahim caught up behind as well. Oh, does he go all the way around the outside? Really, all the moment and almost contact between them. Tim is a former shareholder in 888 Race Engineering, so that could be an awkward little conversation a bit later on in the afternoon.
Mr. Dane for you, Mr. Miles on line 2.
As the Wall Racing Lambo pits, we'll get to that in a minute because, a little bit of a hand in the air from Prince Jeffrey as he goes past. So he's given away quite a lot of time to Brad Schumacher in that little exchange. Remember, they're the net race leaders. Stubbsy?
James Kourouris is alongside me. His brother Theo is out in the car at the moment. You guys, in terms of your class, are looking very impressive. How's it coming together for you?
Yeah, pretty good. For us, this is about the championship and finishing the race.
The pace of the car from earlier on, how is it handling? You think you've got what it takes to get you to the end?
It was really good in the wet. I thought it was really good in the wet. I think we started 8th or 9th and came in I think about 5th, 4th or 5th. So it was really good in the wet. And Theo's only a second and a half off a couple of the pros, so it's pretty good. Car's good.
It's shaping up well for you. All the best of luck.
Thank you. Tough.
That's the word from the Superbarn Supermarkets team, and James Konduras, 5th at the moment. They've still got a couple of pit stops in hand for that outfit to work their way through. And the race leader pit, so Jordan Love is in. So Andrew Jones talked about the fact that these two cars were on an almost identical strategy. Here's proof.
It's about as close as you're going to get to it, isn't it, when you see them parking that close together as well under their booms. So, yeah, interesting that they've deployed that, and I feel like my read on it is correct, and it's just in regards to the discrepancy in lap time between their pro and their AM guys. And, you know, that's what you got to do, Rusty, is you got to look at really objectively what your pace is, and you got to play your cards to that.
Well, and Ross will be, he'll be okay with that, because they know they want to maximise Jordan Love as best they can in that car. He's getting better with every outing in that machine, and he'll soak up this opportunity to continue doing that, but just with a sense of realism, won't he?
Absolutely, and while motorsport inherently is an emotional game for most of us that want to watch it, we get absolutely enthusiastically into it. From within a team operating perspective, it's very unemotional. You know, you literally look at your performance and you go, this is what we've got to play with, this is how we play it, and this is how we achieve the best result.
And our best card right now is this.
Is that, exactly. And yeah, it was really cool to hear from Ross before, and I loved, you know, that Harold's store is a premium shopping offering for people, and that store fits very well with this category, and that's why they've chosen to go down this path, invest in not just a team, but the category, and sponsor the pole award. It's a really good story.
So here is Schumacher. You've seen the Palakis Love car leave the lane, so hence the reason why our TV director is focusing on that. We'll keep that in mind for now, but in between, let's go to Molly.
David Wall, you're looking very cool, calm and collected. It was a bit of a late-minute call-up for you, but it must be good to get back in there and get out racing yourself.
Yeah, it's funny, actually. I'd only be sitting at home, or I suppose I would be here with Tony, but yeah, you think about those things where you're driving around thinking, how good is this? You know, you're driving an unbelievable race car around an unbelievable circuit at a well-run event. So, yeah, just really enjoyed the procedures and everything so far, and the laps have been given. But DT's in the car now. He's got a set of greens on, and see what he can do.
And how is the car feeling? We just saw you change for a new set of slicks as well. Was that part of the strategy from the beginning, or did that just come about after your feedback?
Obviously, with the changeable conditions there, we went for a rotor tyre. After we got through the first 3 or 4 laps, I was wishing we went for the green. But in saying that, the car was pretty good. But looking for a little bit of mid-corner rear confidence compared to yesterday. But overall, it was good.
All the best. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
David Wall there, chatting with Molly Taylor, and I mean, to his point there, the difference between the choice of going with some roaded rubber versus some brand new green tyres.
I guess it hedges the bet, you know, like we said, and we've spoken about it in the first half of this event, Rusty, is that, you know, it's a bit of risk management at the minute, but the other part of it is that Wally says about 3 or 4 laps into it, I wished I had greens, and his reference there is because he wants to make faster lap times.
Here we go.
From green tyres. Now, this is a look from Schumacher. He's having a look at Palakis. He's closed that gap down. And like what we saw before when the tides were turned and it was Brock Feeney chasing down Tim Slade, this is only a matter of time, Rusty. There's a fairly decent speed difference between these two guys. And even Palakis, look at him, he's looking for the centre of the circuit, staying off those white lines, which can still be a little bit greasy in these conditions.
Konduras enters the lane. That's the picture on the right of your screen, and you may have noticed on the headsets down there, Eric Pender, who was very much involved in Kmart Racing success here in the early 2000s with Greg Murphy and Rick Kelly, very experienced engineer to have in your corner, and he's a regular when it comes to outings like this with Melbourne Performance. So that driver change and that pit stop taking place. Meanwhile, Schumacher trying to just find the right place, the right moment, if he can, to get past Palakis. Ross, for now, doing a very good job.
And it does get difficult, Rusty, from here onwards. Anywhere across the top of the hill is where this beautiful Audi R8 makes its lap time. You know, it's able to really flow across the top of the hill, arguably a little better than the Mercedes. But unfortunately, what the circuit does is it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to make moves, although Brad is trying as best he can to force the hand of Palakis. They're high risk, though. As soon as you end up making any contact with each other, you know that both cars are going to be in the fence, but Schumacher's put the pressure on, and it's in the end looking like Palakis has just said, I don't need this at this point in the race. I'll let you go.
That's a really wise decision at that point in the circuit. And he might be a newcomer, and maybe there's a little bit of radio advice in some of that, but that's a good choice by Ross Palakis.
Absolutely. Still an hour and 20 minutes to go, Rusty. The worst thing you can do is fight for that lead from Palakis at the moment, knowing that Schumacher's got massive amounts more speed than you. You've got to get through this stint, run it to your speed for Palakis, and then hand it over to Jordan Love and see what he can do in the final phase of this race.
Brad arguably in the best form that we've seen from him. That's reflected in the lap time you talked about earlier in our coverage. He knows this place so well, upgraded Audi and using it to maximum effect at the moment. Gets that pass done on Palakis. So now we'll wait and see where Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim is. This is across the top. So there you go. So as they crested and it came to Skyline, the pace, the speed that Schumacher carried was significant, wasn't it? This corner here in particular.
And that onboard was telling, Rusty. You could just hear Schumacher was able to commit to the throttle. He got into it hard. That beautiful engine note just took over, and he ran up onto the back of Palakis and almost caught him unaware for a second, where Schumacher had to then come back out of the throttle and look for his spot, which he was able to do on the crest on the run down to the S's.
More from the lane. Here's Fabian.
Downhill with Jordan Love. Car's got some good pace in it, but he got a few dramas going on.
Yeah, car feels really good. The boys have done a mega job to get it set up to run in the dry and wet conditions. Yeah, but just struggling with radio comms. So we've got no radio, which isn't ideal. So a few laps trying to figure out what's going on, having to play around, see what we can in the car during the lap, just to try and see if we can get something to work, bit of a magic touch or something like that, but no luck. So, but no, it's going all right. Ross is doing a tremendous job. He's really impressive for his first time here, and first year in the GT3, he's doing a great job. So, yeah, not too long to go, so we'll see what the rest of the day brings us.
You hopped in the car, the conditions were a little bit dry, wet, a little bit of a moment into turn 2. That looked pretty interesting.
Yeah, there was a couple out there. I think there was more than just one at turn 2, to be honest. But yeah, just finding my feet a little bit at the start of the stint, obviously with the mixed conditions on the slick tyre. But no, car feels good and come to us towards the end of the stint.
All right, have a good rest, and we'll see you out there in the next one.
Cheers, thank you.
Terrific interview there, Fabian, and couldn't help but notice the same person measured Jordan Love's suit up that measured yours, mate.
We'll turn you off. No right of reply.
I thought for sure Fab's dealt himself back in there.
Change of position there. So Jeffrey Ibrahim goes by Ross Palakis. But what that stint from Jordan Love has done is brought the Harold's racing car back into this race. They've made up basically 40 seconds. This is the sister Harold's racing car. Overshot the pit bay, and we've talked about this already today, just at the end of how far that pit boom could get the fuel into the car with the refilling on the right-hand side of the car at this race.
Yeah, there's very little reach still left in that fuel hose, isn't there? So here's another little move. We see Schumacher making his way up the inside at turn 1. That's on Dietz. Adrian Dietz at the wheel of that beautiful Lamborghini. And we'll go back to Fabian. You got something for us there, Fabs?
Yes, I'm down here with Sam Brabham. It's his first time at Bathurst. What do you reckon?
Yeah, first time here. Obviously, I grew up watching Dad come here all the time, and honestly, that was the most fun I've ever had in a race car. That was just unbelievable. You know, obviously with the weather coming in, got to get out there in the dryer yesterday and qualifying for 10 minutes, which was unbelievable. You know, new boots. And just to try and get into a rhythm around this place was an absolute joy. It was amazing.
It's a great place, that's for sure. But small drama in the pit lane, overshot the pit box a little bit. Didn't look like it cost you any time, though.
No, I don't think it cost us any time. We've got plenty of time with our pit stops. No tyre change that time, so we've got plenty of margin. But yeah, need to work on that on my next stop, I think.
It's all good, mate. Good luck for the rest of it.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Fabian. It's very cool to see young Sam here, the son of David Brabham, the multiple Le Mans 24-hour winner, American Le Mans Series champion, and of course with his brother, a winner of the Bathurst 1000 in the Super Touring era for BMW as well. And I was talking to Sam the other day about the last time his dad raced him, which was in a Bentley GT3 car in the 12-hour, and they were going along pretty well. Unfortunately, they were Aston Martined into a fence on the run-up to the cutting, and it actually sent David to Bathurst Hospital for a little while for some checks that night. It was a very big impact. So that was his last taste of the mountain, unfortunately. But we'd love to see Brabs back here, maybe come back to be on the cards at some point. But I love that comment. That's the best fun I've ever had in a racing car. That's pretty telling, isn't it, from young Sam Brabham?
In addition, I'd like to get a campaign going to get our buddy Richard Craill to Le Mans next year in commentary. I reckon that needs to happen. Great event, and you know, our 12 hours, a little snapshot of what the great man's capable of.
And if the three of us make up a quorum, I'll second that.
Never know your luck in a big city.
Good.
Never know your luck in a big city. So an hour and 16 minutes to go. There are 3 contenders in this car race. So we've got a fighting finish on our hands with some overlapping strategies, with Brad Schumacher leading by 7.2 seconds now over Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim. So Audi first, Mercedes AMG second and third. 7.2 seconds the margin, and this fight ongoing between Ibrahim and Ross Polakis. If Ross can stay within a couple of seconds of Jeffrey Ibrahim before that final pit stop, which is going to occur for the leading cars in 15 to 20 minutes time, they will be a contender. I would back Jordan Love to have a red-hot crack at winning this race as much as any other driver, because he is unbelievably fast.
And the fight for that final spot on the podium, or even just beyond it, is going to be fascinating as well. So there's a lot to play out here, lot to consider as we continue to watch the 888 Johor Motor Racing Mercedes AMG.
So there's a couple of battles. So there's those top 3, then they're a lap clear. But Adrian Dietz in 4th, Tim Miles in 5th, Mark Sini in 6th, and even Mike Sheargold in 7th, the first of the AM cars. They're all covered by about half a lap. So there's a lot of little motivation to be first off the podium, but then if you're Mike Sheargold and Garth Walden, you're battling the Honduras boys for the AM class win and get yourself a Bathurst trophy and stand on the top step of the podium a bit later on today.
Quick shot of the GT4 class leader leaving the lane, car that Nash Morris is sharing with Mark Griffith. We are approaching 1 hour remaining in this 3 hour at the mountain. Amazingly, we started Andrew Jones in wet conditions, but it's dry, it's conducive, a little bit on the cooler side, conducive to some nice lap times. Hopefully it stays that way for the final hour. And as Richard just more or less alluded, we can have a cracking run to the finish.
No doubt we will, Rusty. There's some really good strategy playing out here, and you know, the 3 of us love that, don't we? We love the strategy card, and it's just about trying to stay on top of that. We're trying to bring you guys at home along for the ride with us, and we're doing our best to try and explain to you how these different strategies will all play out. But the fascinating scenario for all of us as we just come up to the 2/3 race distance mark is that we do feel like those top 3 cars, when you play out their strategy options, are all going to have them all quite close to each other towards the end of the final stint here. We'll go down and we'll say hello to Molly again.
Well, I found Nash just having a quick word to his dad, Paul Morris, of course. First time in GTs. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, it's great fun. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Mark Griffo for allowing me to drive his car. You know, it's hard to find someone that will help a lot of young kids out, but he's one of those guys, so thanks very much to him. And yeah, it was good fun around here. You know, it's always good driving around Bathurst.
Yeah, totally. And you guys have a really good lead in the GT4 category, but you and Sam Brabham also trading times by hundredths of a second, so that's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. You know, my dad and his dad obviously raced against each other back in the day, so it's cool that me and Sam are racing against each other.
And now you're here also racing in the Trans Am series. There was a few good elbows out moves you were making yesterday, but we've got the big one, the 100, coming up after this. What can we expect?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be elbows out. You know, I got taken out in yesterday's race, so I might have to repay that favour if it comes an opportunity for it. But yeah, it's definitely good to get a few laps now, and then biggest thing's trying to transform back into the Trans Am mode.
Thanks, Nash. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's a significant switching to Trans Am mode from that Merc.
How's his fighting words towards Owen Kelly there as well, Rusty? I'm going to pick up on that. I was just thinking, well, you know, as much as we all love Paul Morris, you can't hide from genetics, can you? He's willing to go toe-to-toe there with Owen Kelly, who, I might say, their families are all very good friends
exactly.
as well.
In short, don't miss the Trans Am race till
exactly. Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Here's the machine we were just talking about, Daimler Trucks Brisbane. Griffo, who's a likeable character in this lane, had some great things to say there before. An amazing switch for him from a rally background, if you will, to GT racing, where, as Molly will tell you after her time in TCR, you've got to get away from the Scandinavian flick mindset and be nice and precise, don't you?
Just crunching the numbers on my spreadsheet, Rusty. Trusty spreadsheet, I might add, for this race, and just working out driver time. So one of the critical numbers we touched on at the start of this race was 100 minutes. No driver can spend more than 100 of the 180 minutes of this race in the car. So by my maths, Tim Slade has available to him about 61 minutes of driver time left, because he was in the car for just over 38 minutes, almost 39 minutes in his stint earlier in the car. There's a little bit more flexibility for 888 Race Engineering. Brock Feeney's got about 68 minutes of driver time left. So they can blink first. They can get Jeffrey Ibrahim in first, put Brock Feeney in, so you'll get that rubber band that Andrew Jones has been talking about. So you'll get the pro driver versus an AM, potentially, as this race plays out. The X factor for mine is Harold's Racing. So Ross Palakis is going to have a longer stint now. Jordan Love was in the car for almost an hour, so he's got about 41 minutes of driver time left. So they're going to be the last of this leading group of cars in the lead lap to stop in this race. So they'll stop with about less than 40 minutes to go in the race, assuming there's no other weather-related dramas or whatever it might be.
And I feel like, Kralsey, the reason that they've rolled it that way too, and they've ran Jordan Love in that early phase of the race rather than leaving it to the last stint for him to have time up his sleeve, is because the earlier you get that out of the way, the sooner you get Ross Palakis in there, the higher the chance you're going to have that safety car, which what it does to the race is it gives us a reset. So the time deficit that they'll lose in this little phase becomes null.
Correct, 100%.
And did you say 68 was the marker? What have we got? An hour 7 remaining. So
yeah, they're not far away from having the ability to pit 888. They may be comfortable with what Jeffrey's doing. They're 12.3 seconds behind the race leader. So the sooner up, well, here you go. They're blinked straight away. Right on it, right on the cusp of the driver time. 888 hit the lane. Oh, this team knows how to win car races at Mount Panorama, and they have rolled it straight away. So they will pit, they will put Brock Feeney in this car, and he will have a flat-out run, and he will have somewhere in the vicinity of 8 minutes lap. So he's going to have 3, maybe 4 laps of an advantage to pull that margin out of Brad Schumacher before Tim Slade can jump in 55.
And I know you're always uncomfortable with this stuff, Kralsey, but you've just helped yourself get a ticket to Le Mans. The way that spreadsheet just operated there and the numbers you punched out absolutely lined up with these guys here. Well done.
Nice second.
So just
Thank you.
Jimmy line until he's back.
I'm just going to sit over here and give myself a pat in the back while we watch this pit stop.
We're doing it for you.
No, this is great stuff from 888. It is exactly what they needed to do, and it's going to give them a little bit of leverage, and these outlaps from Brock Feeney are going to have to be special. He is going to have to drive the wheels off this thing, because they came in 12 seconds behind Brad Schumacher. So if he can be 2 seconds a lap faster than Brad Schumacher, which is a big ask, because Brad Schumacher is and has been the quickest of the AM drivers all weekend, they will get that back to a couple of seconds when what will basically be an overcut plays out.
I can't help but feel as well, Kralsey, that part of that speed difference that we saw before when Feeney was chasing down Slade was possibly off the back of that little flap that we saw coming up on the back of the Kelso electrical entry. It does slow the cars down quite a lot. So, you know, we're not going to see that here, but we are going to need Feeney to be absolutely on the money from soon as he turns that pit lane limiter off.
This is going to have to be green sectors across the top and the final split on his outlap.
About 25 seconds.
Listen to the calmness in the voice there. It's just, okay, mate, out of there now. Job done.
Bit of tape under the bonnet there.
So watch
Big air
Simo, you're right to go on 0. Right to go on 0.
Funnels the hot air out through the radiator in front of that car and over the top
the 0 on the timer.
and onto the rear wing to help create some downforce. There you go.
When you go. All clear in the lane when you go. All clear, all clear.
Because they're at pit exit, they know it's 1, 2, maybe 2.5 seconds to get that car out back into the lane. Right, here we go. These will be the critical 5 minutes of the race. How fast can Brock Feeney go to pull back some time out of Brad Schumacher? Last time round, Schumacher did an 8.1. So there's your reference time. That's the kind of lap time the Audi's doing at the moment. We know Brock Feeney can do low 4s. This is a moment for Ross Palakis, the third place car, Harold's Racing. The Guilty Chocolates sponsorship on that car this weekend. A guilty little moment there at Brock Skyline. And this is for track position.
Exactly.
Tim Miles, great move. Gets past Adrian Dietz, 4th outright.
And the other thing I saw, guys, was Marcel Zalua in the pit lane. It looked like his car was being pushed backwards up the pit lane by his crew guys. So they were leading their category at the time. Not sure what happened there.
Tigani Autosport driver. He and his mate Sergio are partners in Valmont business, based in Sydney. Great mates, brilliant characters to go and have a chat to. I did see Marcel just before this race, and he was a nervous human being about having to start in those conditions this morning. They had a really challenging run at the 12-hour early this year, and they were pretty keen to get a bit of redemption today for what was an early afternoon for them.
I walked in with them yesterday morning into the track, and they were glued to their phones watching Kevin Magnussen take a surprise pole position in Brazil. So they love their motor racing as well. Just listening to the sound in the background of Brad Schumacher, and I reckon what was really telling on the onboard before Krause was the vigour that he had behind the wheel. So the message clearly from the team is right. Feeney is at the wheel. We've got to get you to step this up as much as you can until we can get you to that clear point for the switch over to Tim Slade.
2:08.47 for Brad Schumacher last time by. Brock Feeney on the road in 3rd. His middle split was decent, but it was slower than Schumacher. And he's got a little bit of traffic here. So Feeney across the line on his outlap. He's now matching Schumacher's final split and slightly quicker.
You can't live this game looking in the rearview mirror, I know, and it was tough what happened at the top of the mountain yesterday, but I would love to have seen Jamie Whincup in the mix in this. And Abubakar Ibrahim, bright young racer, fearless kind of approach, relatively new to this style of racing compared to his brother. They are very different human beings in the way they go about their racing, but he was fast here when he got behind the wheel of that car. That would have been a joy to see the other machine in the mix here.
Yeah, look, Bathurst Bites, and I think it was Jamie who said almost everyone that comes here crashes the first time, don't they? So Mount Panorama, bit hard, but there's been some bigger names in motorsport than Abu Ibrahim to have had a crash here. So he's not the only one. No. I know he was disappointed about it, but they'll come back. I love what these guys are doing for Johor Motorsport in the bottom of Malaysia there. It's a lovely part of the world, not far from Singapore. They're trying to work so hard on their racing program there, and contesting GT World Challenge Asia as they get past the Valmont car in an outlap. He's lost a lot of time here, Brock Feeney.
I'll just do some tidying up here, guys, too. I called it that it was the Zalua entry being pushed the wrong way up the pit lane, and it actually wasn't. It was James Moffat's TCR car returning back from technical check. So, yep, I'll just clear that up. My mistake. Apologies for that.
All good. We saw at the bend round of this class of racing, Her Majesty was there. So, mother to both Prince Jeffrey and Abu, and she's invested in this from a competitive standpoint as much as most mums worry about their boys. She loved it, didn't she?
Yeah, it was really cool, isn't it? It's not often you get to see that kind of an entourage rocking up at a Speed Series round. I love it. It adds massive to the paddock. They're a great family, and they are passionate about motorsport, which is so good to see. And if you go back through and look at the history of that family in the sport, it goes back a long way in that part of the world.
And the connection to Mercedes AMG
totally,
too.
Yeah. 2:10.2 for Brock Feeney. So a little bit of debris at the top of the mountain here. A piece of fiberglass has come off one of these cars. That lap was no good for Triple Eight. They have lost time. So their ability to get in early and get their pro in against the AM driver is not paying off at the moment because of where they came out on the racetrack. So that traffic has cost them a huge amount of time.
Tim Miles into the lane. Was heavily engaged in that battle with the Adrian Dietz, David Wall Lamborghini. So Jack Smith will be taking over the wheel of this car.
This has been a great drive from Tim Miles.
Exactly.
He had a pretty challenging weekend on the Gold Coast in the Carrera Cup finale. A lot of curb strikes and some damage to his car with the tyre bundles there. So he was just looking for a clean weekend here, which he's delivered really well.
And we did hear Fabian talk to Tim before after his first stint and mentioned it was the first time he'd driven this car.
Yes.
Tim did share a car with Jackson Evans, back in 2017, and the two of them nearly combined to win this championship. It went right down to the final round over in New Zealand at Highlands, and unfortunately they were caught up in a little incident that took them out of the championship hunt. But Tim has done some Ks in these cars, but he did say there's a distinct difference between this current generation car and the previous one that he had driven.
Yeah, and even the 22 spec Evo Audi is an elite Ford from what we've seen. Here we go, key moment in the motor race now as the Reckless Brewing and Kelso electrical car rolls into pit lane. Great to see the Bathurst businesses on a car leading a race here. And Bathurst finest Brad Schumacher, who lives about 400 metres down the road from where he is right now, is rolling in for their final pit stop. 120 seconds, actually. They will need to pit a little bit longer. It's 135 seconds for their final stop. There's a little bit of mandatory pit stop penalty time included. So it'll be a relaxed stop, but they had quite a good margin over Brock Feeney. And Tim Slade will plug himself in. He's changing teams next year, departing Cool Drive Racing and off to Premier Hire Racing. That team in business last night in some drag racing. Top Fuel team over in Perth. Oh, just got the rattle gun hose, air hose caught up on the front mirror, but they can be relaxed. Another set of slick tyres going on. They look like a used set.
Switch of drink bottles, is that happening too there, I think, maybe?
5 sets of Pirelli P0 tyres over the course of a weekend, so plenty of tyre allocation to use. In 12 hours, we've seen double and even triple stinting of tyres in the past, but with so much time in these pit stops here, you may as well put new rubber or new air rubber on the car because you've got the time to do it.
Well, and it can be manufacturer dependent too, can't it, Krause? Depending on how your car uses the tyre, as to sometimes it's an advantage to be able to run them over secondary stints and triple stints relative to the time loss.
So all seems calm. They're going back for more race tape at the back of this car. It's interesting that they had tape on the front of the 888 car in that air duct that was flapping around on that car.
And did you notice within 2 laps of that car being back out on the circuit, a lot of it had actually self-removed due to the force of the air going in the front and the air trying to come out the back. Has actually said, you know what, I don't want this tape here.
Exactly.
We're going to remove it. Won't be such an issue on the rear of the car, obviously, for the Schumacher Slade entry. So let's follow this. Let's see where this car exits the pit lane relative to the Feeney car. We're all sitting here waiting. Here we go. We've picked it up. So Feeney just approaching Murray's around the final corner. And we saw Slade leaving the pit lane.
Sorry, AJ. That pit stop needed to be 135 seconds. It was 135.7. They have absolutely nailed that. Well done to the Kelso Electrical team. That is maximising every little tenth of a second you possibly can. And that is the track position. So it's a shootout now between the two of them. Through all of that, Ross Polakis cycles back to the front. He's got 1 minute and 30 up his sleeve over Tim Slade.
Flashing lights, trying to get by Sheargold as quickly as he possibly can. Brock Feeney trying to maximise those extra minutes, those extra laps that Richard Crail was talking about, being up to temp, up to speed, as he now tries to close back in on Tim Slade, but it's a decent margin at the moment. Was it 18 seconds, I think, thereabouts that he's got to find.
Track position has killed 888 in this last stint. I don't know about luck, if that's the right word, but that's the only thing I can put it to, just the way that car came out of the pit stop. It deposited into a clump of cars, and Brock, unfortunately, has lost so much track position out of it.
And the teams all have access to timing software that does allow you to have a bit of an idea of when you stop, where you're going to return to the circuit relative to the other cars out on track. But we just have a look at it here. Let's do it in round numbers, guys. There's 55 minutes left of this race. We know that Slade is staying in that car, Feeney's staying in that car, and there's a 15-odd second gap between those two. So the job at hand is for Feeney to be able to chase Slady down. 15-second gap, 55 minutes to do it. There's time there,
and
absolutely.
In the microsectors from, say, turn 2 across the top to where Feeney is now, it's gone from 18 seconds down to 13. So just being a little more up to temp, up to speed is working in Feeney's favour.
Well, look at the middle sector on Tim Slade's outlap, 34 seconds from the cutting to the elbow, 32 for Brock Feeney. So that's the difference between a cold tyre on an outlap and a hot tyre and a driver who's switched on and attuned to the car. So 12.4 seconds between them. But they've still got to deal with the Harold's car run in front. Now, when they stop, and their stop's going to be a little bit later, remember, because Jordan Love doesn't have quite so much driver time left. He's already been in that car for some time. But they've still got 92 odd seconds up their sleeve, and they've got a shorter pit stop time to the tune of 15 seconds. So they'll only pit for 120 seconds when they come into the lane. So they're not out of this race yet, although they roll into the lane right now. I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet and ask some serious questions of what's going on there.
And I'm seriously focused here on that first split for Tim Slade. So 52.1, he's still 0.5 of a second down on Feeney. I expected that pace difference to just neutralise a little bit here. So I suspect that somewhere between 10 and 11.5 seconds is where the gap is going to sit once the 55 entry gets those Pirellis up to pure operating temperature here to make maximum lap time.
So Palakis out of the car, Jordan Love eager to get behind the wheel here. The question is what these guys are doing strategically relative to the Slade and Feeney cars, Triple Eight and Kelso Electrical respectively. So it may be that they're going to take a little more out of Jordan's time here just to try and keep a level of advantage.
You mentioned before, Kralsey, that at the 12-hour, it really depended on what manufacturer did what with tyres, and what we're seeing here with the Mercedes is that they particularly got a big advantage out of going to a brand new Pirelli, and that's what they're doing here for Jordan Love in his final stint. Let's put some brand new tyres on it. He will absolutely maximise them, but you can't run them at qualifying speed. We've just seen the 88 or the 888 entry go past the Palukis Jordan Love car, so they're going to have some margin. Jordan Love still in the lane. Feeney making his way up Mountain Straight. So this is a three-way battle.
9 seconds, 9.4, sorry.
No, this is good. They're going to be about 25, maybe a little bit more. So they nailed that stop to 2 minutes and 1 second in the lane. Might be a little bit more, 28 seconds it's showing at the moment on an outlap, but in theory, this car could be the quickest of the three.
And this is to conclude Andrew's point. Here's the third in the mix here, getting that up to temp. We know he is going to go like a scalded cat here, Jordan Love, isn't he?
He's third in the mix, but what I love about this, boys, my read on it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Slade's got track position.
Yep.
He's not necessarily the fastest guy out there, right? But he's got plenty of experience.
Tick.
Feeney, he's next in line. He's got more speed than Slade, but probably not as much as Jordan Love.
Tick.
So Jordan Love is the guy chasing those two down. Have we got this scenario that by the end of this 50-odd minute stint, or at some point here, are we going to see all three of them together at one time? I absolutely hope so.
The AJ rubber band.
We're getting excited in here, aren't we?
I love your plot, your pitch deck. We're going to make that movie. Let's see what happens in the final.
It's up to these guys now.
Spielberg's on the phone right now, so he's calling right now.
And just an update on weather, boys. I've had a quick look at it here because I don't want to pull the trigger too early. I did say that there's no rain around till about 3 o'clock. I had a quick look earlier, and there is some rain just to the north of us. It doesn't look like it's going to get down to us. It's around the Mudgee area, but there is a bit building in between Wellington and Moloch. And we have seen that here when you track the weather, when it comes in from that direction, that it can turn up pretty quickly. I still feel confident that we're not going to get anything till 3. You're not looking so confident,
Our colleague Matt Nolte reminded me about, what is it, your trademark weather rock? Is that right?
I don't know if it's a trademark, but I'm a simple man, and I feel like sometimes the best information is that's in real time.
If rock is wet, it's raining.
Raining, exactly.
Doesn't have to be any more complicated than that.
Correct. Lap time check, 2:06.5 Tim Slade, Brock Feeney, 2:04.9. So the margin back to 7.8 seconds. Jordan Love across the line, outlap complete, 33 seconds the margin for him. So at the moment, it's 55 versus 888. But any sort of hesitation from either of them, the young man from Perth is going to be attached firmly to their bumper bar.
I wouldn't mind double-checking if everything was okay with the Love car as it crossed the line then. Was it something a little odd in the sound as it crossed the line? Maybe it's just me. Hopefully it's powering. Looks like it's good at the moment.
It might have been Jordan yelling out the window because they've got no radio at the moment, so that they've been battling with all day. So that could be Jordan shouting at the top of his mouth. This young bloke left Australia at the end of the 2019 season as Carrera Cup Australia champion. He went to the Porsche shootout. Wasn't successful there, but then went to race in Porsche Super Cup throughout the 2020 season, and then joined Mercedes AMG customer team in Germany, living, as we've touched on, with Jackson Evans, and he's entrenched himself in that family now. Not officially a Works AMG driver. I have no say in the matter. I think he should be, because he's certainly shown that he's got the qualities to do so. Personable young bloke, super fast racing car driver. I've had the good fortune to call a lot of his junior career here through Michelin Sprint Challenge, which he won, and then Carrera Cup. I love his driving style. In Porsches, it was remarkable because he was able to dance the car around and use the rear tyres a lot, but kept them under the car, didn't wear them out too much. It was a unique skill that his brother Aaron shares, who just finished runner-up in Carrera Cup. So he's a massive talent, Jordan Love. Comes from a great motor racing family over there in the West. I know Mum Nikki will be watching, and Dad Ian raced privateer touring cars at Barbagallo, Wanneroo back in the day. Cool to see more young Aussie kids doing their thing and around the world in GT racing.
And that style that you talk about, they're very, very distinct for the Love family, because particularly in Carrera Cup and Porsche style racing, the rear of the car is so heavy that they both have this natural knack to be able to really get the car to the apex in an aggressive way to get the back sliding, and you don't see it, but it doesn't hurt the tyre. So they're very exciting to watch, and super amount of talent between them.
Yeah, they're great, and really nice young kids as well, and great kids to hang around with. So 47 minutes to go in this race. Let's just bring you up to speed with where we've got to this point in the 3-hour race, the final round in the Fanatec GT World Challenge Endurance Cup. It's been a strategy game. This was 888 peeling off into pit lane. They were bottled up behind the Audi. They needed to get clean air, and it paid off for them too. It was a great strategy call. Brad Schumacher pitted. Tim Slade jumped into that car, and that was the overcut essentially between the two of them for that round of pit stops. Traffic has played a role. It's remarkable, isn't it? Even though the field is not massive, this was a really awkward moment between Tim Miles and Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim, who was displeased, to put it lightly, with the Audi. And then people making bold moves at the top of the hill as well. Down the inside went Brad Schumacher on Ross Palakis, and that was for what was the race lead at the time.
The Palakis versus Feeney Machines as they came out of the elbow. Right now, once the stops have shaken out, a little moment there for Ross Palakis. I think that was across the top. This was Tim Miles on Adrian Dietz for position. Good stint for Tim Miles behind the wheel.
Yeah, he's put in 2 stellar performances today, Tim, relative to the rest of the drivers that are out there. And we saw that last shot there of Brad Schumacher. We can't talk up his performances enough this weekend. Done a brilliant job. You can't wait to see him back here for the 12-hour Kenya Krause, and just that team in general has got a really good feeling about it. We jump back on board now with Brock Feeney. He's also got his hand up from within inside that car, doing something very different to Brad Schumacher, which is a bit of an awkward trait, let's call it, from Schumacher, whereas that one there, that one certainly had some energy behind it, suggesting that he didn't like being held up by lap traffic.
It's 4.7 seconds now between Slade and Feeney, with 45 minutes remaining in this race at Mount Panorama. What can Jordan Love do in third?
And I talked up his chances, guys. I honestly thought he had more speed in that car, but at the minute, he doesn't seem to be able to produce it. I can't help but ask a few mental questions in my head, and I've got no answers for them. Hopefully you two can help me out. When they went on to those greens, did they pressure the tyres low? And is it taking longer to get more out of that car so that he gets it back over the stint? Because typically with greens in quali, you would run the pressures high and you'd get a real gain early on.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. and Jordan's first stint was the same. So it did take a little bit longer to get up to that peak lap speed that he needed.
But it's definitely not helping him here,
No,
Krause. He's
100%.
dumping time to the tune of, you know, at the minute, last lap, he was over a second slower than Feeney, and that gap now is out to 31 seconds to Slady and 27 seconds to Feeney. So that plot that I sort of proposed before, looks like somebody's got an alternate one that they're dealing us out here.
I like your storyline first. We're not going to send it to the editors. I think we roll with that. And with 5 laps to go, the 3 of them are nose to tail, and we get a great Bathurst shootout. I think that's what we're going to have. We're going to roll with that and stick with it. But he's matched them to the first split, matched them across the top as well. So I think now the lap time's starting to come for car 101. So that's the battle for the lead. 3.3 seconds, 6.2 for Slade, 4.7 for Feeney. So right now, this Audi just does not have the raw pace to go with the 888 Merc. And if this comes down to an arm wrestle, it's going to be very difficult for Tim Slade to keep Brock Feeney behind for 46 minutes of racing.
Just keeping an eye on that, or a watching brief on that other battle, Richard, between Jack Smith in 4th place, Michael Caruso 5th, and David Wall in 6th place. Now, Wall to Caruso is only 11 seconds, so, you know, 3 very fast guys, different ages and experience levels, if you will. But, I mean, you know, Smith competing in supercars these days. We know what Michael's been like for us in TCR, and, you know, doing a great job when he pairs up at the mountain with the likes of Mark Winterbottom, and Wally is having a great day out, so that's worth keeping an eye on, that one.
Slade just sets a green first sector. Green, for those of you unfamiliar, means personal best for the car race. So it's not for a lack of trying to extract car speed out of 55. And I wonder if there might be a few little issues with that car. It just hasn't been able to deliver the raw speed that we thought it might have. We're on board with Brock Feeney,
who has the fastest lap of the race with a 2:04.30. But it looks like Love is starting to light up the boards here now, Richard. So he's just gone quickest in Sector 1. So we're energised in this final 40 minutes of the race. Jordan Love doing a really good job behind the wheel, but with 26 seconds to find relative to this driver here, who gives the thumbs up to the lap competitor, who I think was Nash Morris, might have been Nash in the GT4 car. So a good piece of mind, and they get on well, those two guys, don't they?
GT4 cars, both of them have lapped under the existing GT4 lap record here at Mount Panorama in the low 17s. So both those AMGs going well, with Nash Morris and Mark Griffith leading Sam Brabham and Chris Batsios in the Harold's racing car. So 5.8 for Slade, personal best lap. Feeney had a bit of traffic with a 4.6. Jordan Love is about to set the race's quickest lap. So backs up what Andrew Jones was talking about. Maybe they did just pressure them a little bit lower, take a little bit time to build into it, knowing that they had 45 odd minutes worth of running to go in the race. But could the brand new Pirellis on car 101 pay off? I'm going to tell you in a minute, because it crosses the line and Love does a 2:04.15. He was 1.7 seconds quicker than the leader last time round. That is the quickest lap of the race. Now we're starting to get the AJ rubber band payoff. And the car in 3rd is the quickest car on the racetrack. Good.
Thankfully, somebody's gone down there. That's where I just disappeared to, as went and delivered the plot to the 3 teams that we just dealt into a grandstand finish here.
Like you to finance this for us, would you mind?
Yeah, hey, can you guys...
Director?
I don't want to have to eat my words here. Can you guys deal us into this? But hey, look, that's the plan that they would have been looking for, and it's definitely going to be juicy. Looks like Feeney's driven over a cat, and the tail is wagging out of that outlet on the bonnet there a little bit. Guys, I'm going to have a little moment here, and I'm going to quick shout out to my buddy Jack Smith, currently running 4th in the Smith Miles entry. I know this is probably a little bit self-indulgent of me, but he's very new to this game and this style of racing, and those two guys have done a ripper job. So we're clearly going to focus on the Slade, Feeney and Love battle, but Jack's got his own little battle going there with Caruso and Wall, and at the minute, I think, shout out, he's doing a great job.
To all our friends of the Cat Lovers Society, that was Andrew Jones. You're welcome to message him on social media.
Here's
not
the tail there wagging. Clearly I didn't get the note on being politically correct. shout out to the RSPCA who do wonderful things around the country.
They do some amazing things.
Does that get me out of trouble?
We hope so.
Yes.
It's down to 1.6. It's down to 1.6. So Feeney, he's been flashing the lights and playing a bit of intimidator. Slade's been around this game for a long time. I think the words I used in the introduction a little earlier were like cool hands in crisis, and that's what Slade brings in these moments, doesn't he?
He certainly does, and he's not new to this. He's been involved with the McElrea organisation for quite a few years within that 12-hour program. Has done a lot of racing up here in these styles of cars, so he'll feel comfortable in that car. Now, question for me, guys, is I mentioned it before, about an hour ago, to be honest. If we find ourselves in this situation towards the end of the race, can Slady turn that dial up from about an 8 or a 9 out of 10 to the 11 and really start to wrangle that Audi around the place?
What triggers that? I mean, clearly this scenario, obviously, but cool. What did you describe them out earlier in the race at about an 8? What things get him to a 10?
Well, I guess my description was probably not as clinical as what you just described. I think it was old bull, young bull, wasn't it? You know, and it's more just having smarts about you, and that's what Slady brings to him. And that's not to discredit Feeney, but it's just Feeney's at a whole different perspective or a whole different place in his driving career where he just wants to go fast. Was it Ricky Bobby that said that?
Exactly.
Right? So he's got that programmed in his head. I just want to go fast. I just want to go fast. Whereas Tim's going, I want to win this race. Molly, you've got an update for us down there in the pit lane?
I sure do. I'm standing next to Brad Schumacher, so it's a pretty nail-biting place to stand watching this battle that's about to unfold. Do you guys have enough to stay in front?
Well, I hope so. That's for sure and certain. Look, we did pit after 888, so potentially got a little more tyre towards the end, hopefully. It's, one thing to have. I mean, look, it's hard this weekend because the BAP between the Audi and the Mercedes has been difficult in Sector 1 and Sector 3. The Mercedes has got so much more pace up and down the hill due to the extra weight in the Audi, but we're faster across the top. So, I mean, look, we'll see. These guys are bloody good drivers, Brock and Tim, so it's entertaining to watch. And you know what? Tim's been told, mate, it's win at all costs. So let's just see what happens.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be a good to watch either way. But any feedback from Tim inside the car? Everything good at his side?
Yeah, the car's fine. No problems at all with the car at the moment. And we've got no more stops, obviously. So it's just run it to the end. And fingers crossed we can hold out Brock.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Molly.
The gap is 1.1 seconds. There you go.
Slade with a 5.5 last time around. That's the fastest lap of the race for the car. So he's wringing its neck, but it just does not have the raw speed that car 888 has at the moment. But I love the fact that he's been given free rein, win at all costs. So that, when it comes to a question of how hard do you fight, that's the answer. He's going to fight really hard.
The other thing that I'm questioning here, lads, is we started this race in the wet. So how many of these teams, we know the downforce and the wings on these cars are super sensitive. How many of these cars and teams started with full rear wing for support in the downforce, in the rain, and confidence in the rain? Particularly now, I'm looking at the flags out here, we've got a full headwind up Conrod. I look at the sectors, the slowest one for the Audi is down Conrod. Has that car got full wing on it? Have the 888 guys hedged their bets and not gone full aero? One way, I mean, there's all these questions, but one thing we can determine is that the 888 at the minute has plenty of speed over the 55.
Great observation. It's 0.9 now between Slade and Feeney as they run down Conrod Straight. Now, Love has he's been hovering about 29 seconds behind the Feeney car, so he's got the quickest lap of the race, but has not been able to make, understandably, big dents in this because he's kind of about the same pace as them, isn't he? So
he's definitely about the same pace as Feeney, particularly, which we're surprised about because he looked like he had a whole heap more pace than that early on in the race. But yes, he's got a little advantage over Slade, but the biggest deficit is, the gap to Slade is at the minute 30-odd seconds.
Rusty, I'm having massive deja vu back to the High-Tech Oils Bathurst 6 hour. Because if you remember rightly, towards the end of that race, Tim Slade was leading in a BMW sharing with Brad Carr at the time. And he perhaps wasn't quite the quickest car as young Thomas Sargent, Cameron Hill correction, hunted him down and passed him within the final closing stages of that race. And they finished second. This is deja vu for Tim Slade at Mount Panorama. 2 major endurance races at the track this year, and he has been in the same position, leading late, but without the machinery to quite challenge on raw speed.
And we've been given a little snapshot into how this is going to play out earlier, where we saw Feeney roll up to the back of Slade just before he was about to pit, and Slade was super defensive. Now, that was about an hour ago. That wasn't in the closing stages, so I don't think Slade's going to be any easier on Feeney here to allow him to go by. I think he's going to fight hard here, guys, and so he should.
How would your OCD deal with that tape flapping around? Would that annoy you crazily? Because it bugs me.
The cat.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Oh, man.
We'd like to once again say hello to our friends at the RSPCA.
And do you know the crazy thing from within inside the car? I can't speak for Brock, but from my experience is you look so far down the road, he probably hasn't even noticed it, and he wouldn't even see it flapping in front of him because, you know, you're going so fast here, you're looking down the road so far that you're just trying to absorb the information as early as you can. Look how cool he looks in there. He wouldn't even know it's flapping, but look at all of us. We're all like, can someone cut that off?
Crazy relaxed at 270 k's an hour. One hand off the wheel to give it a little breather, and then close right back up on Slade under brake. So less than half a second. It does eke out a little bit. I think Slade got onto Conrod a little quicker and gained a couple of tenths. But then Brock closed up under brakes at the DBA chase.
Well, and the advantage for the Audi is across the top of the hill. We know that, don't we? It carries the speed all the way across the top of this awesome circuit better than any other manufacturer. But what it doesn't do as well is these 2 runs here. The one up Mountain Straight is in favour of Feeney. The one down Conrod is in favour of Feeney. And now this is what Feeney needs to do. He needs to go, okay, I know I can't pass him across the top of the hill. So in a circuit where we've got 3 sectors, I've got the advantage in 2 of them. How do I use that to my advantage to be able to get by him, knowing that he's going to defend because he showed me that he's going to play that card earlier? So there's a lot going on here from within both these cars.
Totally. And the other thing is, you might be thinking, oh, Slade is slowing Feeney up. Far from that. He is still setting personal best sectors. So Tim Slade is driving this Audi as hard as it can possibly be driven. And the hope for mine was that perhaps while these 2 battle, it could drag Jordan Love up behind them, but he's still 29 seconds back. He's lapping at the same speed as the leaders, but just can't get to them because these 2 are driving so hard.
So Slade's upped his commitment level. We spoke about it earlier. For me, he's gone from an 8 to a 9. He's setting PBs here. Can he go from a 9 to a 10 here, and how long can he do that for? Because really, he's looking for qualifying laps. He's cracked that visor. There's a bit of sweat going on from Slady there. He'll have that air conditioning turned down as well because he won't want to be losing anything anywhere. He's working hard in that cockpit compared to what we saw from Feeney the lap before, who looked super, super cool.
Just want to not take too much attention on this. We'll watch them down into the chase. Richard, very quickly, we're in endurance mode here, but they are off to Adelaide very soon, and it looks like a good field of these cars heading to your hometown.
Yeah, in excess of 20 cars set for the final round of the Sprint Championship, so we'll see the likes of Yasser Shahin and Garth Tander back there in their Audi R8. That's going to be a really good show. GT cars on a street circuit are a sight to behold.
And we're in endurance mode here, guys, but we are 30 minutes from the end. We're just switching into sprint mode. These 2 guys are going flat out here. Is this the opportunity for Feeney? Looked like he got a good run up Mountain Straight. He's closer than the lap before.
Slade will need to defend, and he moves his car across to driver's right on the run up Mountain Straight. What has Brock Feeney got the long way round at Griffin's Bend? It's a big move with lots of commitment to pull this up in a GT car. He holds it to the outside. They're almost trading paint on the run up the hill, but Tim Slade hangs on again. He's got used to this year. He fends off the Merc, but the question for mine is, can he do it for 30 minutes? It seems like a task as steep as the mountain he's trying to climb.
Who went into the memory bank and went Murphy Ambrose then? Who did?
I went back to Lowndes Bow.
I was Lowndes Bow as well, so does that make us all super old? What I do know, though, is reading the body language from the 55 car is Slady wants to win this. You asked the question, Krause, can he do it for 30 minutes? It certainly feels like he's going to have a crack at it, that's for sure.
This is awesome. Do not leave us, whatever you do. Our Stan Sport coverage continues right across the afternoon. Trans Am to come. Title deciding race of TCR. Slade parks it. Mid-track, Forest Elbow. Clever stuff. Makes Feeney do all the work. Great racing. And how nervous is Brad Schumacher right now?
He's going to go and drink the bar out at Reckless Brewing tonight, is Brad. He's right on here. This is as close as Brock Feeney has been. The Merc's got a straight line speed advantage. Where does Slade force him to go at the fastest corner in the sport? Now the braking zone. So much experience, Tim Slade, positioning his car to perfection to cover off the 888 Merc. But it feels like an inevitability at the moment. Feeney's got so much more speed to burn.
And the look from Feeney at Forest Elbow, he had to do that because that was his absolute crack at it, and now he's made it happen.
Feeney down the inside. This for the race lead. In the dying 30 minutes of another Mount Panorama Classic, Brock Feeney puts 888 in front. Has Tim Slade got anything left to fight with?
That's as good as you'll get. Two blokes, two great cars, maxed out, and in the end, the slightly younger bull versus the experience of Tim Slade. That was a joy to watch.
And the advantage was with Feeney. We knew that. We saw for the last 15 odd seconds where he had to bridge that gap to Slady, that he knew he was going to be faster. But what I love about this style of racing is that the advantage isn't as clear-cut, that you can just get the job done. Feeney had to be unorthodox about how he was going to go about it. And that was, you know, 3/4 of a lap of pure, intense pressure from Feeney to force an error from Slady. And Slady was doing everything he could to hold him off. I loved it. Well done, boys.
Great.
Both of them.
Great racecraft. Just a great display of hard, really hard but fair motorsport. And this is it again. Talk us through it, AJ.
Yeah, and look, this is just the end result here, isn't it? Slade, he's gone defensive, and at this point here, you know, my take over the rest of the lap was Slade was really braking late, carrying less mid-corner speed than he normally had, and I think Feeney would have been reading that. He was able to get the run out of Murray's, get a little bit of a nose up the inside on the approach to turn one, and by this stage here, job done, off he goes, eyes forward. That gets the nod of approval. Andrew Simpson in the middle there. He gave it the nod. Brad Schumacher to the right of the shot here. Look at the intensity there. He's like, yep, good. Thinking that Slade's held him out. And then the next shot, Feeney going by, unfortunately. I still think Brad Schumacher should hold his head high, you know, to put that program together. We said it's a satellite team. It's not full customer, Audi customer sports racing from within MPC there. So, you know, a lot of things to be proud of for that local team here. Fabian?
I'm downhill with Prince Jeffrey. The car's had fantastic pace all day. Quite an aggressive move from Brock. How do you think today's been panning out so far?
Yeah, it's been going good. I mean, we tried to close the gap as much as we could, and then we had to push to the last 1 hour. And Brock is doing an amazing job, so hopefully we can carry on until the end.
Yeah, so you're in a great position, obviously leading the race. Obviously, you just want to cruise around now and get to the finish.
Yeah, I think this is now one of the most crucial time. We have only half an hour to go, so it's an endurance race. Anything can happen, so hopefully we just want to keep it clean and bring it till the end.
All the best.
Thanks, mate.
Prince Jeffrey knows what it's like to be on the Bathurst podium. Could be a very special day, and can we spend a moment just reflecting on this young man's career. Brock Feeney came through the national karting scene here in Australia, racing the likes of Jack Doohan, has climbed through the ranks, and in the last 12 months, end of 2021, you will fondly remember he wrapped up the Super 2 title here at the Mountain, stepped into the Plum Drive, took over from Jamie Whincup in the Red Bull Ampol racing team this year for 888. Been an emergence year for him, but I mean, this has been a really, really good drive, Richard, hasn't it?
Yep, it has, and one of the more impressive things of Brock Feeney's year, I think, has been his ability to jump between the supercar and the GT car. And he drove in this car at the Bathurst 12 Hour. They finished third outright, 888, against some really strong opposition. Didn't quite get the win they were looking for, but Brock's performances across that weekend with Prince Jeffrey and Shane Van Gisbergen as a teammate were outstanding. And his adaptability and versatility as a young race car driver has been a massive tick in watching his development, and a really solid rookie season in supercars for Triple Eight. So big things to come, you think, for this young bloke.
Gaps 1.6 now to Tim Slade. Can we spend a moment? 25 minutes remaining in the race. Timely reminder, if you've enjoyed that battle between Feeney and Slade, we're going to multiply that significantly when the Bathurst 12-hour rolls into town next year, aren't we?
Yeah, we are back to its February date, Rusty, and it ties in with GT World Challenge Australia, SRO involved in both. SRO, the Stefan Reitel organisation that promote global GT racing. They're all interconnected, and it's such a cool part of the landscape in there. There's some exciting things coming next February.
And a huge contingent coming out from our international counterparts,
the world's
isn't
coming
it?
back,
So
AJ.
it's terrific.
You see the way he smiled then? He's really missed that. You have missed that, haven't you? It's going to be good. At that level I'm talking. It's got some great potential, some good things to come. Keep an eye on your favourite motorsport channels for information in relation to that. So we look back now at the 45 entry. This is the Garth Walden Sheer Gold entry, currently 7th outright, but leading GTA right now.
They are. Nice performance. Garth behind the wheel at the moment. It's one of those drivers. So Garth is now pretty successful in business with Garth Walden Racing, and he's also the distributor for Radical Cars Australia and the eastern seaboard of Australia. So very busy there with that One Make Championship and sports car racing as well. But you'd love to see him drive some more, because he's a very, very good racing car driver with a great pedigree as well. So Garth and Mike have done a nice job today. They're leading their class. They've got a lap in hand, actually, over James and Theo Kondoris in the Audi in the GT Am battle. So this was another team that I spoke to early in the weekend that were looking to make up for a really poor 12-hour. They had some dramas early on. They wanted a clean day, and they figured if they could have that, they were on track for a trophy, and it's looking like it's rolling in.
And am I correct in understanding that GWR run anywhere 20-plus race cars out of their workshop across a 12-month period, across various categories? That is no small undertaking, that's for sure.
4 this weekend, 4 different classes this weekend. Regularly run a fleet of cars in the Bathurst 6-hour at Easter. By the way, put that into your calendars. It'll be on the Speed Series program next year. Easter long weekend, traditional date. Can tell you, Rusty and AJ, more than 80 entries received for a 70-car grid. So we're once again looking to set another record field size for the Production Car Classic next Easter.
Do you work on that panel that has to decide who gets a nod and who? That's a difficult job.
Thanks.
Good luck with that.
Not a chance. No way.
The thing I'm most disappointed about there is that that grid is oversubscribed, so that takes the ability for the 3 of us to place an entry in there now, by the sounds of it.
Who would call it, though?
We could do it from the seat.
We could, actually.
I like your thinking.
Ambitious.
Yeah.
I feel like there's pro and very am line up there.
Is that even very am? That's not even a good enough description.
What's lower than bronze in the FIA driver ranking system, I wonder?
Hey, very quickly, should shout out to 4th at the moment in this race as well. Jack Smith and Tim Miles. They're not going to necessarily grab a podium today. We've got 20-odd minutes to go, so I shouldn't say that. But that's a really, really good performance from both of them, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm just looking at the lap speed between Slady and Smith, who are in the same car at the moment, and they're actually doing similar lap time, lap on lap. And yeah, look, I made mention of it before. Jack is a ripper young guy. I know how hard he works, and he cops a little bit of grief from various people, but doesn't stop him. He gets out there, he works hard. His family love motorsport. They're big supporters of it around the country. His 2 brothers and his nephew are down in Tasmania today riding motocross bikes across the weekend. They just love anything motorsport, and you can't take that away from them, and Jack is doing a ripper job. So yeah, thanks for the shout out, Rusty, and I'll echo that. I think he's done a brilliant job, and hopefully we see him doing more of this style of racing.
Agree.
Thirded, absolutely. 21 minutes to go. This car runs 4th outright, and we've touched on the performance by Tim Miles early on. I'm sure Trace and the kids are watching on from back in Sydney. So too will McElroy Racing, who he usually drives for, and his good mate Andy, who gives him some grief, but they are very close, the Kiwi contingent. Here's our GT4 class leader, Rusty. Nash Morris behind the wheel, sharing with Mark Griffith. We've heard from them earlier in the show, and this has been a really solid performance from these guys. 10th outright, leading their class. But both, I touched on it earlier, both he and Sam Brabham have set beneath the lap record for GT4 cars here at Mount Panorama. So a 17-0 for Sam Brabham. Quickest lap of the race in the GT4 cars. That's Pretty good lap time.
And Nash will have to make the big switch. Well, he'll be getting back behind the wheel of the Super Cheap Auto Trans Am a little later in our coverage this afternoon for the final race of the weekend. What are you laughing about?
Oh, I've just had a communication about our Bathurst 6-hour entry.
Yes.
Apparently, you and I are aluminium.
Aluminium.
Thank you to Brad Gordon.
Excellent.
Brad heads
Excellent.
up. Brad heads up the Shakedown Racing collective on Facebook. They're a great group of supporters of GT racing and events like this. So g'day to everyone from Shakedown. But Brad has given us that driver ranking. I'll roll with that.
How's Andy's license status? What are you?
I want to be aluminium. Let's just make all three of us aluminium. Happy days.
Oh, outstanding.
Very well played. Very, very well played.
Alpha.
So does that mean we're in?
I think so. I know some people to get us an entry, so we'll see what we can do. Wild card. Here's the Honduras boys, the Canberrans, the Superbarn Supermarkets Audi R8. So they're running 9th at the moment, 2nd in the GT3 AM class. Actually, Theo's just set that car's best lap of the race. 2-minute 10.33.
As you do, with 20 minutes remaining.
It's
Awesome
the Brock philosophy, isn't it? Yeah. Like that. Fastest lap on the last lap.
Had a dilemma with this car, I think, didn't they, at the Queensland Raceway round? And we thought it might be out for the Sunday race, but some good work by all of them down there collectively on that team and at Melbourne Performance. And they got the car back for Sunday, which is tremendous. So, and it's been faultless today. It's been awesome.
We touched earlier on the fact that Theo had quite a hefty crash running up to the hill towards Reed Park, the exit of Reed Park before the medal grate at the Bathurst 12-hour on Friday. And unfortunately, that ruled him out from competing. They wanted to make sure he had no concussion symptoms, so he stepped out of the driver lineup. They had a 4-strong driver squad anyway, so they reverted to 3 for the race. But it was a remarkable effort from Melbourne Performance Centre and Audi Customer Sport Racing. They brought a spare car up from Melbourne. It was in the older specification, so they threw the full upgrade kit at it overnight, rebuilt the car. They got the car into the race and had a pretty good day. So their commitment and their support of motorsport is just outstanding. This is Jordan Love. He's 24 seconds off the race lead. It's been quick, this car. In fact, they're still in the high 2-minute 4s, so they're still quicker than the leaders, but just losing that track position early. They dragged a bunch of it back, but running a little bit later with their Ram driver against the Pro ultimately has cost them a shot at winning. But having said that, this is still a huge performance from this still very new team in the sport. And remember, Ross Polakis is now 1, 2, 3, I think 4 race meetings in to his extensive racing career. So to be looking down the barrel of a Bathurst podium is a huge result for the Harold's racing team.
Might be touch and go. He is 19 seconds behind Tim Slade at the moment, but lapping with enough of a bite into that relative to Tim's times that could get a bit tasty, that battle for second at the end.
Yeah, I have been keeping a bit of an eye on that, boys, and when we were at 30-odd seconds behind Slady for Jordan Love, it was about 30 minutes to go, and we're now at 20 seconds behind him with about 20 minutes to go. So it is coming down relative to each other. I do feel like that'll neutralise out, though, as the stint goes on. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll see how it plays out. But for me, you know, those guys had to do something different to Feeney and Slade. Otherwise, if they just stayed on the same strategy, Kralsey, you know, they were going to end up where they are now anyway. So the thing in with all of this is if we hadn't got, which we didn't, a safety car at the right time, it would have actually played in their favour. And that's why they had to roll the dice, and good on them. Some days it works for you and some days it doesn't.
No, I completely agree with you, and full credit to Chris Papadopoulos and Josh Hunt behind the scenes at this team at Valenti Rosso Motorsport. They put a lot of effort into building this program with the guys from Harold's. Valenti Rosso, another race team that runs cars in a whole host of different categories. Actually, they had a win in the Radical Cup Australia a couple of weeks ago at the Bend with Peter Clare. Josh Hunt was co-driving there. Josh still races occasionally, but they're building a good little business there. And they were featured on Wild Sports website, actually. A big profile into Chris, who spent a lot of time in Formula One, as we touched on earlier. So great program, 3rd outright at the moment. And as you touched on, only 19 seconds behind Tim Slade. Got to give it to Slady. It would be easy to roll over, but he has just set the fastest first sector of that car for the whole race. So he's still driving the wheels off it, because this is Bathurst. You never know. There's 15 minutes to go. But plenty can happen in a 15-minute motor race here at the mountain.
Yeah, his fastest lap of the race is a 5.2, and his last lap of the race was a 5.3.
Yeah.
So he's just being as consistent as he possibly can out of that and getting the best lap time out of that car as he can, because no doubt he'll be getting the same information that we have here. It'll be coming from his pit lane into the car saying, Jordan Love is taking time out of you, Slady, and he'll go, okay, well, I'll do everything I can to make sure that we've got a nice little buffer at the end of this race here.
And I reckon those kind of radio messages are going on from the team to the respective cars of Michael Caruso and David Wall. The gap between those two is about 10 seconds, and every time David banks a slightly faster one, Michael starts to light up the timing board. He's just gone personal best across the top of the mountain, so that's a little one to just keep a watching brief on too for 5th place.
Yeah, we're on lap 67, and Michael Caruso's fastest lap of the race was on lap 66. Wally's was on lap 60, so they're driving those cars very hard. Battle to get in the top 5.
And it just goes to prove what we were talking about before, Crailsy, around the durability of that Pirelli tyre, and particularly on different cars. So the Caruso Audi R8 and the David Wall Lamborghini, both pretty kind to that Pirelli tyre, to be honest. Whereas Jordan Love, that rear-wheel drive Mercedes, it will start to, even with the traction control, it will start to burn the rear tyre off that car. And knowing that Love turns the car in pretty hard and he has the rear sliding. Yeah. We saw examples of it at turn 2 earlier, didn't we?
These cars as well. GT3 formula has been remarkable both in its longevity, and it really came to prominence in sort of the late part of the first decade in the 2000s, and came to Australia 2005, 2006. We first saw the real current of what you call modern GT3 cars. And I think one of the early cars was a Lamborghini Gallardo that Bryce Washington raced in Australian GT up against existing Nations Cup machinery. It evolved and grew. The 12-hour went GT3 in 2011 with the Gen 1 Audi R8s that came. But globally, this formula remarkable, both in its longevity, but the way these cars are constructed for customer use, and the fact that they can punch out such consistent performance over a race distance. And they're designed to do 24-hour races as a benchmark, as the pinnacle. Nürburgring 24-hour, Spa 24-hour, and now in the GTD class in IMSA racing in America, the Daytona 24-hour as well. But as an example of how good these things are, the fastest lap on the 12-hour this year was set on lap 256. So it's 1,800 kilometres into a car race, and it's setting to low 2-minute 3s. And we're seeing it here as well in a 3-hour race, that they can still go as quickly now as they could at the start. It's a massive testament to this formula and to the constructors that build cars for it.
And to that formula, Crailsy, they really found a great spot in the motorsport landscape globally to be able to combine pro guys with amateur drivers and mix them together, but produce these phenomenal events. And you know, to run for 24 hours with a group of 3 or 4 guys of varying levels around some of the world's best racetracks is such a cool thing to be able to do.
And for me, the industry that spins off it as well. I mean, Mercedes-AMG Customer Racing at AAA. You've got Melbourne Performance for Audi Sport. I mean, they're properly world-class operations with damn good people in there.
Locally, yes, but globally, events like Le Mans and the Nürburgring, you know, the manufacturer involvement that goes behind those events and the amount of customers of road cars that get taken along and get immersed into those programs is super important, and that's no doubt what helps contribute to the long-term or longevity of this style of racing and category.
The next 2 years as well are going to be really exciting for GT3 racing, because there's a whole range of new cars being homologated to race. So the new BMW M4 is already racing. That's a hugely exciting car. Ferrari's just launched the 296 GT3, which is their next evolution of their GT3 program. That car is going to be very, very special. Ferrari tend not to do car racing by halves. Audi continue to roll out with upgrade packs on the R8. Mercedes with the AMG GT3 as well. Different brands continue to offer up. I think there's a new Lambo in the pipeline as well from their factory race team in Italy. So, yeah, new cars, new models, new shapes, and they've delivered some pretty iconic moments at this place already, just in the annuals of this place. There's new Porsche 911 GT3R we're yet to see in Australia as well.
I did sharing that house that I mentioned earlier with Jackson Evans. He was tuning in on the Saturday night at the 1000K race when that new car was launched, and he was very keen to see how its debut went, and he's very eager to get behind the wheel of that. So yeah, so many exciting prospects into the future. We just you just detailed, Krause, how good the history of this category is, but it certainly isn't over at the moment, is it? It's there's some very, very exciting things happening in the not-too-distant future.
And stuff that is absolutely aspirational and very close to what rolls out of the showroom floor. That's the thing about it, isn't it? So kind of pin-up machines that really appeal across a raft of manufacturers.
A couple of cars here that you'd love to have in your garage, correct,
Exactly,
Rusty?
exactly. Speaking of the great work being done by David Wall, there he is, just getting past there at the moment by the car of Brock Feeney, but Wall sits in 6th place at the moment and hovering still there, just 10.9 seconds behind Michael Caruso in that fight for 5th outright in this race.
And we've spoken about how good a job Dave does, but for me, that just shows how classy he is as well. He's trying to hunt down Caruso. He wants to get to the back of him at the end of this race, but he's got enough awareness to go, oh, there's Brock Feeney behind me. I know he's leading the race and I won't make a menace of myself. For anyone watching at home that wants to get into this style of racing, there's a lot to be learned from that. Respect on the racetrack can be given. Fight when you need to, but that was a class act, Wally. I tip my hat to you.
A family of motor racers. His late dad did some great things around sports sedans and had some very cool cars with some special historic connections here in Australia as a part of the stable. And David's gone on to shape that race team and do some good things with people like Adrian Dietz here with his Porsche Carrera Cup program that makes it a very appealing organisation to go to for customer type things like this, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100% right. I sometimes feel like Wall Racing get a little bit missed. They're one of the few teams based in Sydney. They and Garth Walden Racing are about the only two based in Sydney that operate on a proper national stage. Should meet HMO Customer Racing up there as well. But from running in those multi-classes, multi-cars, different championships across the country, yeah. But it's such a professional outfit. There is Adrian Dietz. He's a great guy to have a chat to. Very passionate about GT racing, but also the history of the sport. Loves it as well. And that's why he's got this livery on the car. It's that classic BASF Porsche livery from the 80s. And he did say to me this morning, he's like, we have thought about changing it, but I just can't bring myself to do it because it's become intrinsic with his racing.
Oh, please don't from a commentator perspective. It's very easy.
It pops, doesn't
exactly.
it?
He's a highly intelligent guy, Adrian, and there's a lot of reasoning behind why they went to this livery. And when you get a chance to sit down with him and just have a really good, honest conversation, he's a pleasure to talk to. A really, really good guy.
So there's the other end of the scale for you, the hallmark entry in the hands of Michael Caruso, just chasing the Superbarn machine with Theo Konduris at the wheel there at the moment. But Michael holding down 5th, David Wall, who we were focused on before with that livery in the Lamborghini in 6th. The difference is 11.4 seconds between them right now in favour of Caruso in 5th.
Tim Slade's just done his car's fastest lap of the race. So he's going to go down swinging, Slady. He's 9 seconds down, but a 2:05.24 for car 55.
And the importance of that, Krause, is not for him to try and chase Feeney down. It's to make sure that Jordan Love doesn't get to him at the end of this race. He's better to maintain the speed that he's got or use the speed that he's got through this section of the circuit across the top of the hill. Huge commitment levels from Slady here over the mountain, and that's where he's generating his pace, because as soon as he gets Love onto the back of him, he knows that up the hill, up Mountain Straight, he's not in a fair fight, and he knows coming down the hill, down Conrod here, that he's not in a fair fight. So super smart. Well done, Slady.
Margin is 18.1 seconds back to Jordan Love, so with 6.5 minutes remaining. You're watching there.
Well, you just saw him reach down for a little adjustment there to the dial, and if you're playing Connect 4, it's right-hand side 3 down. I'm just not sure what it is. I can't read that clearly from this TV, but I wonder if it might have been a slight adjustment to perhaps traction control or the ABS, both of which have multiple settings.
I think it says brake on the left-hand side of it, and then the bit in the green says front to the right. So I'm wondering if it's a brake bias adjustment, but I don't think they're electronic, are they? So yeah, I just got the correct that's what it said. So it does suggest that he's made himself a little brake bias adjustment there, Krause. Good job.
Andy and I were hoping for a bit more than Connect 4 if we come to visit for a meal. Surely.
I could dust off Monopoly. Working motorsport, you need to be good with the good with that. Just enjoying the work of Tim and the Audi R8, the most successful car in GT3 racing. Who would have thought you'd be able to do that 3 hours ago at this place when it was teaming down? It's a beautiful day in the central west of New South Wales at the moment. Should give a shout out to the Bathurst Regional Council, who do an amazing job in preparing this venue. It always looks $1 million. But
I love for all the parents out there. Hey, buddy, we'll put some gumboots on you today. It'll help keep your feet dry. Yep, I'll fix that. I'll just roll down the side of a wet hill.
The feet will be the only things that come back dry after that.
That's right.
For all the parents out there, we all know we've all been there. Kids will find a way.
He's hovering at about 10 seconds, Brock Feeney, just sort of maintaining the margin. Nice and smooth from our race leader. Nice and relaxed on the wheel, as you can see there, and has been paired with Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim. That together with Triple Eight, they've done a superb job. So now we look a little further back. So this is 7th outright, Richard Craill, but importantly, Garth Walden and Mike Sheargold have done a very good job in a class sense here.
Yes, and class victory, and they've got a huge amount of track position up over James and Theo Konduras. 7th outright, Archin and Mike Sheargold have done a nice job today. Garth continuing to lap quite quickly as well. He'll be enjoying this. He said to me this morning, he said, yeah, I've done 7 laps this week. So they've tried to maximise the time the AM driver gets, and Garth's been around here a long time. So it was all about getting Mike up to speed in this car. And he said, yeah, it's just, you can never get enough laps at this place, but sometimes you go in massively underprepared. So having the opportunity just to get a long stint will be a really nice thing for Garth.
And I think we need to give credit to the entire field here that we haven't seen a safety car off the back of what was a very bizarre lead into this race today. You know, Friday, the laps were limited. There was wet running. There was a little bit of dry running. But I would have said on average across all drivers, most of them have probably only completed less than 10 leading into the start of the race here today for a whole raft of factors that went into that. So to go out there, find your feet and run through this event so far, we've still got 3 minutes remaining, or 6.5 minutes remaining. So yeah, there is time, but everybody's done a brilliant job so far.
Not religious, but thanks to the mountain weather gods, where it parted for us for 3 hours of racing. We hope it stays that way, because we've got TCR still to come in our coverage, Trans Am, and a whole lot more. So we're not done. This is the final and the very closing stages of an important GT race, and we now switch back and have a look at the leaders of GT4. Nash Morris, who's the grandson of Terry Morris, who is here this weekend. Terry did a bit of racing himself in the early part, I think, of his career. And of course, Paul, his dad is a winner here at Mount Panorama in supercars. Paul raced successfully in BMW very, very memorably with the Diet Coke BMWs that battled the famous Audis in Super Touring.
Yeah, and then he made the jump for a couple of the Super Touring Bathurst events as well, and he actually, I believe he shared a car with Cameron McConville one year up here as well. So yeah, he's a big personality, Paul, but one thing you cannot take away from him or his family is that they just love motorsport and any type of it.
So little wonder it's now the 3rd generation at the wheel, and this is young Nash, who is racing in Trans Am. He's been a very prominent figure in that class of racing for us, and has come on in leaps and bounds. Here's our outright leader, Brock Feeney, with 11.1 seconds in the pocket and just about 1.5 minutes left in this race. Quickest lap of the race does belong to Jordan Love. Love's been able to get to within 16 seconds of Tim Slade, but as Andrew Jones predicted, as the race wore on, Love was not able to keep making those inroads, but he's holding down a very good 3rd place at the moment, and if he's able to get it over the line there, Ross Polakis will be absolutely jumping out of his skin. So great drive.
And Tim Slade is continuing. I feel like he's gone to the 11 on that switch that I keep referring to, because lap 75 here, the last lap, he's just done a 2:05.1. It's his fastest lap of the race. So if you're asking the question, is Slady cruising around in 2nd? Absolutely not. Oh, that was nearly an awkward moment for Feeney, just reading the traffic there. Did catch my attention. Not sure if anybody else was bothered by that, but yeah, always difficult when you're threading the needle.
That's Michael Caruso, isn't it, at the wheel of the Hallmark entry. So experience Good set of hands there.
Cost Brock quite a bit of time in that middle sector, 2 seconds relative to Tim Slade at 1.8. So Slade continuing to hustle. Kept driving right to the very end, clock winding down. So thinking there might be 2 laps to go in this race. It's going to be a close run thing. The clock ticked to 0 plus 1 lap. We'll confirm that for you. Across comes the 888 Race Engineering Johor Motorsport car. So a 6.9 that time round for Brock Feeney. Slade's about to set another PB here. What does the Kelso Audi do? 2:04.95, first lap in the 4s. So the thing's getting better as this race goes on. 470 odd Ks into the race. 9.2 seconds the margin between the two of them. Maintain the range, Slady, keep pushing on. Jordan Love in third place, 16 seconds now behind Tim Slade in a 2:04.67.
That's a great lap
last time round. Quickest of everybody. As Brock Feeney leads the way up. This going to go out on a limb and say probably the biggest win of his young career to this point. Super 2 series aside, this has been a massive performance, and so too for Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim. And with this result, based on this and a third place, the Lukamoli Bathurst 12-hour, that will be the endurance championship for these guys as well.
And I guess we have to pose the question, I'm not sure if it's been announced yet, Kralsey, you might know, but you'd have to think that Brock will saddle up for that program at the 12-hour come February.
Yeah, and he did a super job with them this year. I was just outstanding in what was a Pro-Am race. So there was a lot of heavy lifting to do for pro drivers as well, but Prince Jeffrey was outstanding there. It's a great program. So there'll be 1 lap to go next time by. 6.213 kilometres for car 888. What a performance this has been. They've had to work so hard for this, and the challenge was thrown out by Brad Schumacher's team, and they fought like anything. And just a little bit more track position was all they needed through that pit stop sequence. Ultimately, the strengths of the Mercedes AMG this weekend in terms of getting up and down the hill quickly is what's going to work for them, and they will back up a 1-2-3 result in the Bathurst 12-hour with another Bathurst win GT race here this afternoon. 1 to go for 888 Johor Motor Racing, Brock Feeney, Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim.
Andrew Simpson there to the left. That's Roland Dane to
One more,
your
mate,
right.
one more. Bring home.
Jessica Dane over Roland's shoulder there, I think, who's a stakeholder in the organisation these days and got a role as commercial director, I think it is. So
I did speak this morning to Tim Miles, who was a former partner in that team, and he did use the term allegedly retired Roland Dane, who still pops up at these rounds. I can say that. It wasn't me, RD. That was your friend Tim
very
Miles.
good attributing there, Richard. Well done. So Brock Feeney on his way home here at the mountain. We hope you've enjoyed this 3 hours of GT racing that for all sorts of different reasons has been entertaining, and this young man is about to bring home a very special result in his race career. Highlight the performance of Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim. Good job behind the wheel, and he's been tested throughout this year in wet and trying conditions at times at other venues that we visited, be it sprint or endurance. Good pairing here today, and they've made some great decisions, and we thoroughly enjoyed that battle when it was Brock versus Tim Slade for what would ultimately be the move into the race lead. Looking like taking home a victory in the order of about 10 seconds in his pocket. Good day out for 888 Johor Motor Racing. Conrod straight for the final time.
We can all just enjoy the note
Was he looking at the camera then?
from that big AMG.
I think he was.
Saw himself on the big screen, perhaps. What a drive. Winning at Mount Panorama is a bit of a routine thing for these guys. It's never easy, but they have put on a great show. Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim, Brock Feeney, 888 Johor Motor Racing win at Mount Panorama.
How's the radio call?
3-hour Bathurst champion. Awesome driving, mate. Awesome driving.
Celebrations on the pit wall already.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
There's Tim Slade, runner-up. but fought like you would never believe and set his fastest lap on the final lap. He did a 4.7 on lap 78. And P3, Ross Polakis and Jordan Love. Ross Polakis is going to stand on the Bathurst podium. That is a huge result for Harold's Racing.
There's Boo. Shame that he couldn't be a part of this race today. We're glad that he's safe and okay. And what a story for the 888 team. They've had the polar opposites, the absolute extremes, if you will, with one car badly damaged in a roll at the top of the mountain. But this one has come out on top today. A young man who came through the national karting scene here in this country. Jack Doohan's gone off to Formula 2 and testing for the Alpine F1 team. But on the other side of the country, it's Brock Feeney who's taken victory in the 3 hour with that man there. Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim gets the congratulations from Jess Dane.
And the AM driver, Rusty, played an enormous role in the outcome of this race. So his contribution to that was utterly significant. Confirmation of the order, 11 seconds, the final margin. Tim Slade and Brad Schumacher second, Ross Polakis and Jordan Love third. Smith and Miles, I think they'll be happy with fourth place. Really solid day in front of Mark Sini and Michael Caruso. David Wall fought to the end there and got that margin down to 6 seconds in the end to Caruso and finished sixth with Adrian Dietz. Garth Walden and Mike Sheargold win the AM class. Sergio Perez and Marcel Zalua take out trophy, and Nash Morris and Mark Griffith, Greg Rust win GT4.
So highlights for you of the 3 hour race here at the mountain, which finally, after the unfortunate cancellation of race 2 of TCR, was able to get underway. The conditions would continue to improve. These guys were the first to blink. Mike Sheargold and Garth Walden. It then set a flurry of activity in the pit lane. Jordan Love went absolutely ballistic and went for it. In the end, he would get home in third.
Yeah, there was this little moment here where the 888 entry was trying to make their way past the car 4 of Miles and Smith. Thankfully, nobody ended up in the fence. How good was this one? That was Brad Schumacher at the wheel, heavily committed from the Audi across the top of the hill. This was another little pivotal moment. This was an overtake from the 888 again, and that was Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim at the wheel. But this was the real battle here, and this was shades of Lowndes and Bow, wasn't it? We went with Krause, and that was Tim Slade, really defensive, making Feeney work for it, and that went on for nearly 3/4 of a lap until Feeney was able to get the job done on the run up to turn 1.
High class, high quality car racing between two very, very accomplished racing car drivers, and they put on a great show within the final 40 minutes, Rusty, of a 3 hour enduro.
In the end, Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim and Brock Feeney would get there. It means a huge amount to that man and to Prince Jeffrey as well. Victors at the mountain. Big day of action still to come here, and they will celebrate this one.
That's Ross Polakis celebrating with Prince Jeffrey. That's a cool moment. This will be great celebrations. This team have worked so hard. How's the strike rate for 888 at Mount Panorama this year? Third in the Liqui Bathurst 12 hour. They win the Bathurst 1000. They win the 3 hour GT race. That's not bad at all, is it?
Happy hunting ground. Feeney gets the congratulations and right back at Prince Jeffrey. Indeed, it was an awesome drive.
Champion of the Bathurst. And I love seeing those on-board celebrations from Feeney. That's when the emotions are at their rawest, and you could just see how much energy he put into it. He was feeling very happy with his day's work.
Stubbsy?
Yeah.
Well, Ross Polakis, first time here at the mountain, and you're here in the stop area in third place. How good is that?
Oh, it's the best feeling. It's surreal. Did I say before you could pinch yourself? I'm still doing it. No, amazing. We're so happy. Jordan put a great stint in there. Valente Rossi, the team, did a fantastic job. I just can't believe it.
Mate, congratulations for everything you've done this year. Well done. Enjoy this.
Can I just one thing? Just to my daughter, Sophia, I love you.
There you go, Sophia got a mention too. We'll move along to Brad Schumacher. We've had a chat to him a few times today because they've been right in the mix, mate. Couldn't quite hold off the 888 car, but that's a great day's racing.
Yeah, of course. You know, we're a little team from Bathurst punching well above our weight against the heavyweights here. And, yeah, it was just so difficult this weekend with the balance of performance against the Mercedes in sectors 1 and 3. So, you know, I'm happy to take home second position. And Tim's done a fantastic job for us this weekend. I just want to shout out to all our guys at Schumacher Motorsport and thank them for all their hard work.
Mate, well done.
Cheers, thank you.
We'll move along and grab Prince Jeffrey and Brock Feeney. Brock, I'll start with you. You've just jumped out of the car, mate. Fantastic top step at Mount Panorama. Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, it's pretty awesome. I'm loving these things. Just thanking these guys for bringing me along. So, yeah, good battle with Timmy there. Brad's been doing a ripper job all weekend, and, you know, those boys have been really strong. But this man did a fantastic job, put me in a good position, and we had a fast car. So, heaps of fun.
Mate, that smile says it all. Prince Jeffrey, the Motorsport Australia Endurance Champion now after that victory here today. Congratulations. What does that mean to you?
It means everything. You know, since the first time I raced here last year, I've always wanted to win here, and yeah, to win the champion endurance race is just amazing. You know, I can't say much. I'm pretty speechless at the moment, and thanks to this man, it's been awesome all weekend, and thanks to the team and everyone that giving us a great car. And unfortunate that we couldn't have our sister car with us, but happy that everyone is safe, and yeah, we're really happy about this, and we're going to celebrate it with the team soon.
Party hard, guys. Enjoy it.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
You are watching the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst International, and we have so much more from round 7 of the Speed Series here on Stan Sport. Coming up, more TCM action before Trans Am and S5000 hit the track, and then it's one last chance for glory in the final race of the season for TCR. That's all ahead right here on Stan Sport.
Celebrations continuing in pit lane after the Fanatec GT World Challenge endurance race here as we get our focus on more racing to come to finish off an extraordinary day and an extraordinary year. Don't forget, the TCR Australia Championship is going to go down to the wire. So a quick recap. Race 1 yesterday, taken out by Bailey Sweeney. Race 2 today, no result because of rain on the track and poor visibility, a lot of fog around it. It's going to come down to the title deciding race, the last one of the year.
Oh, how good, how exciting to be in this place. I mean, we've been through so much this year, so many different tracks where we've seen different drivers and different manufacturers have advantages, but one constant that has always been there has been Tony D'Alberto there getting the points, and the question is, will it be enough today?
All right, well, let's do the numbers. 75 points will go to the winner for the final race in TCR, and Tony D'Alberto has a 49-point lead over Will Brown, now second in the championship. Jordan Cox is 51 points adrift. So the equation reads like this. For Tony D'Alberto to be the champion, he just needs to finish 12th or better. If he doesn't get any points, if there's a DNF next to Tony's name,